Apologies. And how is your day going?
Going well. Going well.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Slightly better at understanding time zones than I am.
I guess.
Oh, I gotta fix this. Sorry, I got a little issue with my video, making sure it's got
You
set
have
good. Okay.
nothing to apologize after the screw up on my end. Would never
Well,
fault you.
I'm glad. Excuse me. I'm glad that you screwed up. That way, I don't feel bad.
I do
So,
it as a sign of courtesy. You know what I mean? Gives everyone else a little bit of leeway.
yes, it's a very kind gesture. All right. So, guys, we are ready to go. Let me see. Sorry. So we are ready to go. Our topic here tonight, we are discussing income inequality. Ideally, the way this normally works is I'm going to be completely irrelevant. We'll just have each of you guys in about 5 minutes or so give the brief summary of your position, what, why you think income inequality is or is not a problem. And then after that, we'll go conversational. Either one of you guys just go ahead and jump into, the other's argument, contest it. And ideally, again, I'll be irrelevant. I'll step back. I'll only step in if it's necessary. If there's a lot of interrupting, you guys are being mean to one another, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. So to get started here, Vosh, you're arguing that income inequality is a bad thing. Would you like to start?
Certainly. So I can go ahead.
Go for it.
Please.
Okay. So normally when I and when other people talk about income inequality being unethical, what we're really talking about isn't actually income inequality. It's inequality in our ability to access necessary and helpful services to life. So income inequality is only bad insofar as it ensures that an underclass isn't capable of purchasing the same foods, enjoying the same medical and civic services, purchasing the same transportative services as people of an upper class. And that's the thing I really have an issue with. If in this country today, the lowest class, the poorest people, were capable of affording everything they needed to achieve a base subsistence existence, an existence that was happy, free of great financial stress, then I wouldn't really have a problem with income inequality. I guess if people want to be absurdly wealthy and go buy their sixth yacht, I mean, as long as the working class is doing okay. Unfortunately, the majority of people in this country cannot afford a $300 emergency. In fact, the majority of the people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck, and that incurs upon people a tremendous amount of stress. It means that you're denied educational opportunities. It means that you're denied life opportunities. And right now, the best way for us to address that is to address the income inequality issue. So long as the services to life are gatekept behind access to wealth, we need to make sure everyone has access to wealth. And in terms of how feasible that is, the amount of income inequality we have right now is at record levels. We haven't seen this degree of income inequality in this country pretty much ever, which means that the trend we see today is reversible. We're not talking about heading in some bold new direction when we talk about fixing income inequality. We're talking about returning to what has been the standard for pretty much all of human history. Nothing radical, nothing extraordinary, just guaranteeing people the basic right to existence.
Great. So if we're talking about the standard of human existence for all of human history, well, the standard for all of human history was adjunct poverty. The standard for all of human history was that people had nothing. They lived short lives. They were short, brutish, and extremely unpleasant. They didn't have the opportunities to have air conditioning as most poor people in the United States have. They didn't have an opportunity to eat to the point of being obese as most poor people, or many people, poor people in the United States have. There's no shortage of food or access to most necessary things, necessary services in America today for anyone. But let me stop there. Look, I'm not a defender of the system as it exists today. I want to wipe it out. I want to change it dramatically. I want to make it a lot freer. And I don't know if income inequality in the new system will be greater or smaller. And I don't care, because I think income inequality as a measure of anything is insignificant and irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant and significant is the freedom of people to be able to pursue their own values. Pursue their own values with whatever endowments they have, for whatever genetic endowments they have and whatever material endowments they have. So my focus is on freedom. You know, we can throw around statistics like majority of people can't afford $300. First of all, it's not $300, it's $400. This is a Federal Reserve study. And if you actually read it, that's not what it says. It says that people, like 40% of people say that they would need to take on debt. They would take on debt if they had an unexpected $400 expense. It doesn't mean they can't afford it. I would take on debt if there was a $400 unexpected expense, even though I can afford $400. There's a lot of caveats, a lot of problems with that study. It's just not true. We saw it, by the way, during COVID. We saw the fact that during COVID, people lost their income. Unemployment was slow. Certainly stimulus from the government was slow. And yet there wasn't massive starvation in the streets of America. People somehow survived and somehow managed. And indeed, debt levels over the last 12 months, 15 months in the United States have come down because people have cash. So inequality in America is not the problem. Now, I agree that there are problems today. And one of them is that people are stuck in poverty and they don't have the opportunities to rise out of poverty. People, there's a lot less mobility in American society and American economics than there used to be 100 years ago. If you're born poor, you're often stuck being poor. Those are things that need to be solved. None of those problems have anything to do with inequality. They have everything to do with the lack of freedom in America. They have everything to do with things like minimum wages. They have everything to do with welfare. They have everything to do with licensing laws. They have everything to do with state programs that restricts people's ability to up from poverty. The taking money from the rich and handing it out is not a solution, certainly not long term, because it takes away productive assets. It takes away the opportunity for people to actually have jobs. It takes away the source of economic growth, saving, and investment. So while there are lots of problems in the U.S., and I might agree with Vosh about what some of them are, inequality is not one of them.
Okay, if I'd like to respond to that. So we do undeniably live in a time of unprecedented privilege in most respects. There's really no getting around that. But I'm not necessarily sure if I'm following the logical progression of your statements here. So you say that fundamentally what you value is the freedom to pursue your values, and I agree. Positive freedom, that's what matters most. It doesn't mean it's not enough that nobody's keeping you from doing what you can do. You have to have the ability to do what you want to do, which is something that in this country is determined by your wealth. Pretty much anything and everything a person can or would want to do is in some way gatekept behind wealth. Even things that don't cost anything require time, and that's time you would otherwise spend on working to pay your rent. So when we're talking about positive freedom, the ability to do what you want, we are talking very directly about poverty and the extent to which people are making enough to meet those needs. And the problem is the poverty that we see today in this country, the inability to meet your needs, is directly linked to income inequality. There is a direct relationship between those things, much as in the same way you see that as union participation goes down in this country, a disproportionate amount of money goes towards the uppermost economic class. It's a relationship that we see. All of the hundreds of millions, the billions, the trillions that get, shepherded off towards the uppermost 10%, that is money that could have otherwise been divvied out in wages. You say that you don't want to solve this problem by handing out money. Well, okay. We don't need to talk about welfare. Why don't we talk about the fact that in spite of this country growing massively more productive, workers' wages aren't rising proportional to proportional to inflation. Whereas the uppermost 1%, theirs are skyrocketing massively, significantly beyond productivity, beyond inflation. We can see what this is. This is class warfare. Wealth being taken from the working class, the majority, and shepherded off to meet the excessive needs of a hyper minority. So the inequality, I'm afraid, is the reason people aren't able to maximize their positive freedom.
So again, there are all these studies and all these graphs that are completely bogus, but it seems like people repeat them often enough and present them often enough that they somehow become true. There's no breakage of the relationship between productivity and wages. When you look at productivity by sector, when you look at productivity by actual, by what people actually do, productivity are completely correlated with wages, as they always have been and they always will be. Wages go up when productivity goes up. Yes, it's true that productivity has not gone up equally across sectors. Productivity has gone up a lot more in some sectors than others. Wages have gone up a lot more in some sectors where employees are creating more wealth. Their wages have gone up more. The fact is that over time, the only reason manual labor, the people who used to be part of unions, the only reason their wages have gone up over time is because their productivity has gone up over time, and it still is going up, and wages are still going up. This idea of stagnant wages is just untrue. It's just not reality. But their productivity has not gone up as much as computer programmers. Their productivity has not gone up as much as other service industries that produce a lot more than they do. So income inequality, to the extent that it is a consequence of markets, the extent that it is a consequence of freedom, is a product of wealth creation. You create more, you earn more. You create less, you earn less. It's a simple equation. And there is no right level of inequality. Inequality is derived from your ability to be productive. It's derived from your ability to actually produce. So there is no link between income inequality and wealth. Yes, it's true. Over the last 30 years, a lot of wealth has gone to particular sectors. It happens that those sectors are the ones driving this economy. It happens that those sectors are the ones that are having the most impact on the economy, driving increased productivity. Technology, for example. We're seeing massive amounts of wealth created in technology, and therefore wealth being created in that sector that is going to those people who participate in the creation of those values. Other industries are dying. Jobs are dying because they're being replaced by machines, by technology, by software. And people are going to have to get retrained to increase their productivity in other sectors. Finally, let me say something about positive freedoms. Yes, freedom is a positive in the sense that freedom is there, and freedom means something. Freedom is the freedom to pursue values. In order to pursue values, what you need is to be free from coercion, free from force, free from somebody stealing your stuff or taking your stuff or expropriating your stuff for their own benefit. Otherwise, leaving you free to pursue whatever values you choose based on your ability to pursue it. That does not give you, the fact that you might be poor does not give you a right to value somebody else created, does not give you the right to engage in the force, in the coercion that would be required in order to redistribute the wealth from other people. The marketplace distributes wealth based on productivity. You have no right to demand from others that they sacrifice for you because you feel like it or because you need it. It's up to you to bootstrap yourself and to work as hard as you can and to educate yourself to the ability, to the best of your ability, and to produce the kind of wealth that will allow you to do the things that you need to do. There is no level at which everybody needs to be because there's some universal need that everybody needs to fulfill.
Right. I feel like one of the hallmarks of a debate with an objectivist is like an angry screed against wealth redistribution when I haven't actually mentioned it yet. I haven't once mentioned it. I'm really only referring to wages and how they track onto productivity. And I'm afraid with regards to that, you've already mentioned a few things which are factually incorrect. So the idea that productivity to wages hasn't broken is demonstrably incorrect. If you'd like, you can go take a look at the yearly or quarterly increase in productivity in virtually every economic sector in this country. And I want you to go look at that, and then I want you to see if median wages follow it. Of course not. No, at no point. No, not even close. By a fraction, maybe. Sometimes inversely.
Can
So
I
the
comment on
idea.
that before we get to the next point?
Oh, huh?
Let me just comment on that before we get to the next point,
Sure.
because otherwise we'll keep circling. That's just not true. I did a whole show on this. People can find it on my YouTube channel. I cited economic papers that show this is not true. It's all of this is a distortion with a political agenda. Let me finish. Look at how they deflate productivity and how they deflate wages. They use two different deflators. They don't use the same deflator for both of them to adjust for inflation. They use two different deflators in order to do it, which benefits the graph that they want to show, that is productivity going up more than. Plus, what they're looking at is averages. They're not looking at, they're looking at medians and averages. They're not looking at different sectors and how this correlates for different jobs. So if you adjust for the deflator, if you adjust for what they mean by hourly wages and you add in, for example, the fact that over the last 30 years, a big chunk of wages of employees because of government programs has to do with benefits. If you adjust for benefits, then they track almost one-to-one. The graphs completely match once you adjust for all the distortions that the people who wrote this paper purposefully put in to get the result that they wanted.
Right. So just to be clear, I'm not referring to any specific paper. I'm literally.
Let me just say,
Wait. I just want to say, I'm referring to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the quarterly growth rate that it refers to. You can take a look very clearly. So, for example, the labor productivity of non-farm businesses from quarter one of 2017 to quarter one of 2021. This is including the dip with coronavirus, by the way. Usually sees a quarterly increase in productivity of about 2%. Now, there are no median wages in this country rising by 2% per quarter, so that'd be 8% per year, or cumulative, so slightly more than 8% per year. Now, I'm not expecting like wages have to like perfectly track onto every productivity metric possible. That's not realistic. But the problem is that you're actually riding two fences right now. You're saying income inequality isn't really a problem, but then you're also saying that all these metrics that we use to determine the existence of income inequality are bogus. And that's just not true. You can take a look at this by pretty much any way possible. You can take a look at this at the relative participation in unions, the tracking of median wages onto existing labor productivity. You can look at this with regards to the fact that the CEOs in this country used to make like 8 times as much as the average worker, and now they make about 300 times as much as the average worker. You said that wealth goes to the most productive sector, but the productive sector that I'm railing against here is CEO, not a sector, a title of ownership that allows them to distort the wages of those they employ to ensure that they receive more money for more productivity and the people below them receive less. The idea that wages track onto productivity is just not true at all. By what metric, by what market function would that be the case? What exactly is to keep owners from just paying their workers less? This is one of the bedrocks of Marxian economics, after all, the idea of labor exploitation, but it's also an empirical fact of how our economy works, borne out in all available information. If you say you don't think income inequality is necessarily the issue, okay, we can disagree on that. But we cannot disagree on the factual basis at hand here that income inequality is worsening, that American workers are suffering, and that they are absolutely not being paid in accordance with the rapid increase in productivity this country has seen, borne out in our GDP and in the quarterly reports from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Everything, it goes up and up and up and up and up. But minimum wage barely keeps up with inflation. Sometimes it even dips below its original point relative to inflation. And so many people, they get paid not minimum wage, but $1 above it. Their reward for working 5 hard years at McDonald's, $1 above the minimum wage. They get kept off the number of people on minimum wage, but their income is fundamentally tied to it. We need a higher minimum wage. We need to use government policy to redress the greed that corporations have been enacting upon the working class. By the way, greed, which has led to the deprivation of our institutions, of our infrastructure, and is leading to greater and greater economic unrest that will eventually pay dividends down the line.
So I encourage everybody to actually research these factual questions, not just to go according to the party line, but look at what economists have actually written on this, not just look at raw statistics, because statistics can be manipulated easily, but actually look at people who've done analysis on this. And you will find that the productivity wage divergence is completely 100% bogus. It's just not true. It does not happen. Indeed, we can debate the numbers, and people have debated the numbers. Thomas Piketty came out with a famous book, Das Kapital for the 21st Century, in a few, 10 years ago now. And people have analyzed his numbers. The Financial Times did a massive story about the distortions in the numbers that Thomas Piketty used. He's published a number of studies since then that have been challenged by other academics about the numbers, about the actual facts that he is presenting. The idea that these economic studies are not motivated by politics is just wrong. But I don't want to spend the whole time me saying he's wrong and him saying I'm wrong. You guys do your own research. And don't necessarily buy what the majority are telling you. Look deeply into the actual economic literature if you can. I'd recommend a number of websites. One good one is John Cochran's The Grumpy Economist, where he analyzes some of these things. It's quite striking how distortive many of these statistics are in order to try to make a political point. CEOs is a great topic. Yes, CEOs make a lot more today than they used to make. And there's a simple reason for that. They're a lot more productive today than they used to be. And you can see that. You can see that, one, in corporate profits. B, you can see that in today, whereas 30, 40 years ago, a CEO had to deal with a market that was maybe the United States, and that was it. Today, they deal with a market which is a global market. It spans the entire world. It's a far greater world. Revenues of some of these largest corporations are significantly higher. The complexity, the supply chains are significantly greater. The job of the CEO is probably the most difficult job in our economy, the most complex job. There are very, very, very few people who can actually do that job at these companies. Many of them don't survive. The tenure of a CEO is on average 5 to 6 years because they're kicked out by the board of directors when they don't perform. 10 years are shorter than they've ever been because it's hard to find talent. It's hard to find talent. And what happens, just like in sports, why does LeBron James make so much more money than Michael Jordan? Is he that much better than Michael Jordan? No. The reason he makes so much money is today the NBA is a global market. There's a lot more revenue generated by the NBA, part of which is his profit. But CEOs are the opposite of the exploiters. CEOs are the ones who make jobs possible. There are no jobs. There are no workers. There is no wealth to be distributed before CEOs, entrepreneurs, capitalists create that wealth. That somebody has to have an idea. Somebody has to organize labor around that idea. Somebody has to fund the idea. I've never actually seen a group of workers, unionized or not, show up at a place, say, wow, let's build an automobile or let's build X. Doesn't happen. And if it happens, it stays small and it falls apart very, very quickly. And it doesn't happen because it can't happen. Labor cannot produce by itself. It needs specialization. It needs specialized managers. It needs coordination. It needs capital. It needs somebody to pay their wages. Labor wants to be paid even before there's any profits to be made, and yet it demands wages. So labor is a product of capital and of managerial skill. It is not the beginning, it is the end. And the reason labor gets a far smaller share is because labor is easily replaceable. There are jobs that one can replace easily with people in a neighborhood or with people from other neighborhoods or people from other countries. CEOs are rare. And as a consequence, they earn a far higher salary. Just like if I played basketball, I'd make a lot less money than LeBron James, a lot less, because I don't play as well. I'm not as productive.
Okay. So there are a couple of issues here. First and foremost, I think that one of the flaws in your ideology is that you're approaching this problem from the reverse mindset. You said that CEOs are getting like 10 times as much money as they used to because they're 10 times more productive, and you can tell that because there are higher corporate profits. CEOs don't produce those profits. The workers they hire do. The productivity that you are referring to is not managerial productivity. CEOs have not gotten 10 times better at organizing labor. Corporations, technology, the workers who work for them have gotten that much better at producing materials. You're ascribing to the CEO the wealth, the proceeds, the benefits of the labor their underlings produce. And that's the power dynamic that I think is unethical, because the people with the power, the CEOs, are the ones who get to say, oh, yeah, I'm making 300 times what my workers do. Of course I am. My job is just so hard, you know? It's so hard to be me. There are so few people like me, which, by the way, love to see some kind of quantification for that. You know, people always say labor is replaceable, labor is dispensable. Well, sure, but it could just be that the way we currently organize our corporations, the way we currently organize our society, we just designate there be one grand poobah who has to have a certain set of skills and gets paid an enormous amount because of it. Labor has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. Since the agricultural revolution, through one economic system or another, people have come together and produced tremendous things. But the arguments you're making are those of a medieval lord, of an aristocrat. All productivity, all good, all produce, all of that, that comes from the lord. They're the one responsible for all of it. As for the serfs, well, they get their kind, and they're replaceable. So really, they're lucky to get what they can. And if they get less than what they're getting now, well, that's because they deserve less. And if they get more, then, well, that's for my beneficence, my generous. Your ideology doesn't account for the possibility of exploitation. It's almost post hoc. If the workers are making so little they can barely afford to live, that's just because that's what people are going to pay for it. But we decide what corporations can or cannot pay for the labor of workers. We decide the society that we want to build. And a few hundred years ago, all lords had to do was provide continued existence. They rented out the land to the serfs, they provided feeble protection against marauders and bandits, and that was that. We collectively decided, nah, you know what? We can do better than that. And in doing so, we may have stripped the right of the medieval lord to own the serfs and the lands they worked upon, but we made society freer. And that's what we want, right? To make society freer. But we can't do that as long as all suffering, all exploitation, all oppression, all of it is justified by a system that is so insular that it'll ascribe all corporate profit increases to the behavior of CEOs and nobody else. That leaves no room whatsoever for the possibility of mistreatment.
Well, it is absurd to compare CEOs to lords who would whip their whip their serfs, and where there was no voluntary interaction. Even Marx didn't do that. He understood the difference. But No, it's absolutely the case. It is not workers who designed the complex supply chains that produce an iPhone. It is not and to the extent that people work with the CEO to design those, the people in the C-suite, the engineers, they all make a lot of money. This idea that the people that it's only the CEOs making a lot of money. No, there's an entire pyramid of people who are making a lot of money at various levels, depending on how
Can I ask
productive they are.
something really quick?
Sure, of course.
How would you tell if a worker was being underpaid? Not just one worker, but like the working class. What would you use to determine, like, hey, you know, the underclass in this country, they get paid barely enough to exist? Would that be like, how would you determine that that was wrong?
So I would say that if the situation was such that a vast proportion of the population was making barely enough to exist, right? Then I would say there's a problem here we should really look into. Now, to the extent that today, I agree, people make too little money, there is a problem we should look into. I agree with that. I think there's too little freedom. There's too little capitalism. I think there's too much unions, and we can talk about how unions historically.
That's free association right there.
No, it's the other way around. You see,
Unions aren't free association?
Unions hurt workers, and the more union labor there is, the more workers are hurt, because what unions do is they raise the cost of living. They raise the cost of living faster than they raise wages. So your wages might look like they're going up, but your cost of living is going up faster.
That is
So
demonstrably
unions-
the opposite of what
That is
unions do.
That is absolutely not the case. That's absolutely not the case. And again, you know, we can argue about statistics, but it's just the fact is that today workers have access to things that they couldn't even imagine 40 years ago, often at the cost of zero. Google, everything that's available on a smartphone, or anything that's available on the internet. Somebody had to create that, and yet it's available to workers today at zero. And yet your metric of standard of living and quality of life cannot capture all the benefits that the modern American economy, with all its flaws and lack of freedoms, has produced for everybody, including the working class, including the poorest of the poor, have access to things that they couldn't even imagine 40 years ago. And it's all because, let me finish this point. It's all because somebody had a vision, somebody imagined, somebody organized a company, call it Google, to create a product that is available to all of us today for free, and no economist measures the actual benefit of Google to our lives. And yet now, we can't imagine living without it. And yet it took entrepreneurs who raised capital, hired workers, built a company that today produces a product that none of us can live without. That is how labor is created. Labor didn't create automobiles, an entrepreneur created automobiles. So yes, I look at it from the top down because it is from the top down. It's not the top down because somebody is born into a situation. It's the top down because somebody has to create the thing that the worker works to put together, not even to produce, because the real production is the idea. The real production is the engineering. The actual putting things together is the easiest, simplest, least productive step in the process.
Tell me, sir,
that is interchangeable.
Did Steve Jobs engineer the iPhone?
He got the engineers together to put it together. Yes.
So he got people who knew what they were doing to come together. He just brought the money, but they were the ones who came together and built it, right?
Steve Jobs had the idea. He put the people together that could make the idea reality. Without the idea, you don't. And now the people who came together to create that are not your lower classes. They're not your people that are hungry. They're engineers that made a lot of money on Apple. Many of them are gazillionaires because of Apple stock.
So wait. So to be clear, hold on. Idea guys are worthless in all businesses. Idea guys are useless. The people who actually have the ideas to develop all these technological marvels, the existence of which you're using to paint over existing inequality and poverty, are engineers and scientists, people who work for
No,
wages from
as long as
hold on,
people-
hold on. You said so many things, which was so disrespectful to the work of so many people who've actually done real good. Automobiles were designed by engineers. The iPhone, engineers. The internet, engineers. Google, engineers. Now, it is by the grace of the devil that it is the people with the ingenuity to produce these things do not have the money to form the businesses that are necessary to fund their projects. They got to go to somebody for money. But you and your ascription of all economic productivity to CEOs is as ludicrous as saying that all of the marvels of the Enlightenment were the product of monarchs, because monarchs were the ones who had the money to fund all the civic infrastructure that educated the people who would then go on to make the engineering, the artistic, and the philosophical discoveries. You ascribe everything, hold on, all value,
Yeah.
all achievement to the people who happen to be there with the money. But I don't believe that. I believe that
I'm not-
people work collaboratively to produce things, that we're not capable of individually as an island building the internet. And I think that you are wildly under-ascribing the value other people bring to this table, to this equation. And this is, by the way, and I want to be clear, this is the language of authoritarianism, because it has always been the prescription of authoritarians to attribute all of the might, all of the ingenuity of a society to its upper crust. Here in America, we do it to our CEOs. In Nazi Germany, the innumerable achievements that they made, technologically and militarily, were ascribed to the state or to the race. And back during the days of feudalism, they were ascribed towards the divine right of the kings who presided over their kingdoms. Only we, and by we I mean, I don't know what you would say, socialist, left-leaning people, people who support unions, recognize the value in giving the worker their proper due. I think the anti-freedom or the autocracy in your narrative is most evident by your opposition to unions. Do you oppose corporations because corporations and the economic behaviors they engage in oftentimes hurt workers? No, you don't. Your argument there would be, well, corporations have the right to do this. We are a free country, etc., etc. But unions, you say unions are something that we need less of because what? Because you say they increase the cost of living? This isn't true. Unions help the workers who are a part of those unions. But that's free association you're against there. Free association you're willing to oppose because it takes power away from the upper crust of the economy, from the CEOs. This isn't pro-freedom. This is just pro-autocrat. And the autocrats you've chosen, they don't wear a crown. They just have a huge stock portfolio. But it's autocracy all the same.
So, of course, you're completely perverting what I said. The CEO is not the only productive person in an entire company. Everybody, hopefully, within the company is productive, and everybody's getting paid based on the level of productivity. That is the beauty of the corporate entity, that it is a voluntary transaction in which people get compensated for their level of productivity. Steve Jobs was a poor nobody, hippie, stunk, didn't believe in taking showers. He started from nothing. And he had an idea, and he brought resources together, engineers. He paid them, by the way. He gave them stock. Many of them, as I said, became millionaires. He brought in workers on assembly lines. They produced a lot less than the engineer. So they got paid a lot less than the engineer did. Steve Jobs, who put it all together, who had the unique mind and the unique ability to put it all together. Unique because other people were in the same situation as he was. Poor, without anything, could have gone to the venture capitalist, could have had the idea, didn't do it, he did it. He made a lot of money. Now, different people make different amounts of money based on how productive they are.
How do you
That's
tell?
not demeaning. That is not demeaning to anybody. The fact is that the people who are on the assembly line, the people who do their manual labor, make the least because they're the least productive, make the least because they're the most easily interchangeable. The further you go up the chain, the more productive you are, the less interchangeable you are, the more money you earn. And at the top is the CEO, not because he's some feudal lord, not because he was born into wealth, not because he's tapped into some political connection. He's there because he has been the most productive. He is there because he has added more value than anybody else. And that value, let me finish, that value has a lot to do with organizing people, with the ability to put people together, with assigning responsibilities and duties. And look, in a free society, I'm not against unions. Unions are great, right? Except when they get the power of the state to impose their will on their employers. I'm all for voluntary unions, voluntary corporations. The boss can fire the union worker if they want. The union worker can walk away if they want. If it was truly voluntary, and if the state and government and the legal system stayed out of it, then I see no problems in unions. But the fact is, the economic fact is that when unions dominate an economy, they don't luckily today, but when unions dominate the economy and have the power of the state behind them to force wages above their productivity, then what happens is prices go up, the prices they pay for goods get more expensive, and their standard of living, not their wages, but their standard of living, their purchasing power actually goes down. So the only thing I have against unions is the fact that the state backs them up.
But the state backs corporations up. Corporations lobby the government 1,000 times more than unions ever could.
I'm against that. I'm against the corporations lobbying the government.
But you're
I would
not
love
against
to
corporations.
I would love to have a government that has no power over the corporations, has no power over economics, has no power over unions, has no other than to protect property rights, to protect us from killing each other, protect us from maiming each other and defrauding each other, a government that stayed out of it so that we can all relate to one another through voluntary transactions. And if you want to start your own co-op where the workers own the means of production and they build the materials and you're willing to compete with me who start a company in a, call it traditional way, then fine, I'm happily compete. Have that competition. I know exactly how it will turn out. I come from I know how the kibbutzim have turned out, which were voluntary co-ops like that. They were economic disasters from day one. I know how all the communes and co-ops in history.
So the available data on worker cooperatives suggests that they're actually quite robust, more endurable, and more resilient to price shocks than traditionally managed firms. So I don't know. I mean, I can't speak to your anecdotal experience, but I mean, you want to compete. I stand by worker co-ops any day. Workers there tend to be paid better and happier too. It's funny though. You say like you don't like it when corporations lobby the government. Huh?
As far as I know, there's only one real successful co-op. It's in Spain, and it's not even that co-opty. It's got a bunch of.
But is the metric for success needing to be like one of the biggest corporations in the country? What if it only has 500 employees? I mean, there are thousands of cooperatives like that all over the states. One way or another. I mean, so it's interesting to me. Like you say, my problem with unions, they lobby the government, but you don't say this of corporations, even though corporations. Well, hold on, wait. No, you do say it. You do say you don't like corporations lobbying the government, but you didn't volunteer that information. What you volunteered with unions was, I think they're bad. Wait, hold on, wait. Let me finish the point.
Cronyism. I'm opposed to cronyism from beginning to end.
I understand that, but your argument against unions, fundamentally unions, was that they lobby the government in ways that push wages up, which decrease or increase the standard of living. Now, I disagree with that, but you levied a fundamental argument against unions because they lobby governments. You've done no such thing for corporations, which lobby governments at a much greater level. Now, you've said, to clarify, you don't like it when they lobby either, and I believe you. But that wasn't something you forwarded. That's not something you said up front. It's an afterthought. Why not oppose all corporations since they seem to have such a strong propensity for lobbying? You seem to be much more willing to condemn unions for that.
I don't oppose all unions. If unions don't lobby government and if government doesn't give them favors, then I don't oppose unions. If corporations should not lobby government, and look, I'm not blaming the unions and I'm not blaming the corporations.
What if both unions and corps do? Like right now.
Let me just say, I'm not blaming the unions for lobbying government. I blame government for having the power to grant favors to unions. I want government not to have that power. If I could separate government or corporations, I don't want government to have any power to give favors to anybody in economics. I want economics that all of those exchanges to be voluntary and free.
Well, since corporations can currently lobby the government, shouldn't unions be able to too? Like, would you be okay with there being more unions because they're only engaging in the same bad behavior corporations already do?
I am against all bad behavior.
Right, but I mean, you're saying like, we need more corporations and less unions, but both unions and corporations are doing the thing you're saying you oppose.
I'm saying that because corporations lobby the government, they're actually hurting their own people. So they're working against the interest of their members and in the favor of the leadership of the union. And this is why unions so easily get corrupted. I think corporation lobbying hurts all of us. It hurts shareholders long term. It hurts employees. It hurts long term. It hurts the CEO. It hurts the country. And I'm thoroughly against all lobbying by corporations.
Do you think we should shut down corporations until we can find a way to eliminate lobbying?
Shut down unions. I'm not for shutting down unions.
You said we need less unions.
All I said was I don't think unions are helpful, right? I'm for anything that a voluntary society produces is fine. I mean, in terms of unions and corporations, I'm fine with. But the fact that unions have shrunk, in spite of the fact that they have the power of government behind them, suggests to me that they're not serving their workers.
All right. Well, it just seems to me like you're more willing to impugn unions for behavior that corporations are far more likely to engage in. But regardless, this is tangential. The fundamental question I'm interested in is how do you tell if a person is being paid in accordance to their degree of productivity? Like, if you have a minimum wage worker, and then that person now gets paid more because of a raise, did their productivity like jump up with that raise? Like, what would it take for you to look at a worker and say, that worker is not, uh-oh,
what the hell?
Your free meeting has ended. Uh-oh.
What the hell?
Not shilling out for the subscription.
All right, hold on. I already paid for this. Let me see if I can fix this. You guys go ahead. I'll get the video back on in a second. Sorry about that.
No, it's cool. It's cool. The audio is still working, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because
how would you look at a worker and say like this person isn't being paid in accordance to their productivity? How would you determine that? Because it seems to me like your justification is post hoc. Whatever you get paid must be what you deserve to get paid. Corporations get paid a bajillion. That's what they deserve. Workers get paid like $6 an hour. That's what they deserve. Like, how would you determine that?
It's a great question. I mean, there are, in some industries, it's easier to figure this out than in other industries. But I think the best mechanism by which to look at is if the worker left, given his level of productivity, could he get a higher wage somewhere else? This is the way competition works. The way competition for labor works is that I'm willing to outbid you for your worker if I can make
But that's also post hoc. Like then you're just saying like, okay, it's still post hoc, just taking into account wages at other corporations. What if wages are depressed across a whole field?
Inside of corporations, I know how many widgets he makes per hour, how much I can sell those widgets in the marketplace, and therefore what kind of return on widgets I'm getting from his labor. And if he's now producing, if his productivity has gone up from producing 10 widgets to 15 widgets in an hour, then his productivity has gone up 50%, and he should get a 50% wage.
But that doesn't happen ever.
It does happen. Of course it happens.
It absolutely does not happen. A minimum wage worker works harder and then gets paid more? That doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't work harder. He produces more.
To produce, it works harder to produce more, to process customers faster, to make more widgets. That does not happen.
Of course it does.
No, it doesn't. When you work hardest, you get your face on the wall with a sign saying Employee of the Month. The idea that this is one of the fundamental critiques of like capitalism. The fact that like the lowest, the like easygoing worker and the hardworking worker get paid the same, that's a problem.
The only way wages go up is because worker productivity goes up. When wages, and this is why when you look at employees and you look at their lifespan, they don't start off at minimum wage and then 5 years later still make minimum wage and 20 years later still make minimum wage. Their wages go up steadily, and they go up steadily because they learn skills, they learn abilities, they become more productive. The capital is invested in them, so they get to use machines more effectively, so their productivity goes up, so their wage goes up, and constantly throughout your life. And if you work for a living, you see this. As you get more proficient at what you do, as you get better at what you do, as your tools that you use to produce what you produce get better, you get paid more.
I'm sorry,
and that is from the beginning of the 19th century till today. The only reason wages have gone up is because productivity is
absolute fantasy. And I ask, and this is like Econ 101, like in a vacuum type arguments. I encourage anyone who is watching this who has actually worked a job. Do the coworkers that you have that work harder than the least hardworking coworkers get paid more proportionally? Are only the most effective and productive workers promoted to the next up position? No, this is no. But wait. Wait. Hold on. This is the problem that I have. Now, my argument for economics under a capitalist system is fairly simple. The marginal understanding of how like people get paid and what things cost. It's people get paid what their betters, what their overlords can get away with paying them. It's as simple as that.
Nonsense.
If you work, if you're a worker, if you work for a wage, you're going to be paid the smallest amount that your employer can pay you because that's the supply demand curve. Your job is to advocate for the highest wages you can get, and their job is to advocate for the lowest wages that you can get. And then that the interstice, the mark between those two, is the amount that gets settled upon. Because the alternative is you can go find another job that'll pay you more, or like you wouldn't work at all because there were other like opportunities available to you. But this doesn't describe productivity, and it certainly does not describe merit. What it describes is, well, a number of factors, mostly tied to the availability of work and the skills and difficulty involved. But the idea, I'm just saying, there is no economic theory. Wait, I'm almost finished, please. I'm almost done.
Economic theory suggests what I'm saying. What you're saying is completely devoid of economic theory. There's no economist except
the marginal theory of utility is not economically.
The marginal theory of utility suggests that you get paid on the marginal product that you produce. The marginal theory of utility suggests that you get paid based on how productive you are, not based on the power that your so-called overlords, that the people who employ you, have over you. That is completely distortive. I don't know where you studied economics, if you've ever studied economics, but that is not economic theory. That is pure propaganda. Economic theory, and every economic textbook and every economic theoretician would suggest that you get paid based on how much you can produce. The employer is going to make money off of you produce in order to fund everything else that goes into the production, but you get paid in direct proportion to how much you produce, how much you create, how much you bring to the table. And
wait,
yes,
I can't let this go. You didn't let me finish earlier, so I just want to finish the point that I was trying to make. So the idea that you are paid in accordance with your productivity is an idea repped by exactly zero legitimate economic fields. I mean, it's funny to me that you would try to set economic legitimacy when you're an objectivist, a field of economics that is not taken seriously and has never been taken seriously and is derived largely from works of fiction.
That's good.
Wait, no, hold on, wait. It's important because the idea that workers are paid based on productivity is just not true. They get paid what they have to be paid by their employers, or they'll find another place that will hire them that will pay them more. That's it. That's how they get paid.
That's exactly based on productivity, because that's how competition works. Competition drives wages to the marginal wages are going to be equal to the level of increased productivity.
What if a worker starts to produce twice as much, but their field ends up becoming obsolete due to another technological development? They're twice as productive.
They're not productive anymore. They're not productive anymore because they're obsolete. Obsolescence means that their productivity has just dropped to zero.
So that's not productivity. We're not talking about merit anymore.
We're talking about productivity, right? We're talking about how productive they are. That's what I've been talking about the whole time.
So, again, I have to ask you, how would you determine whether or not a person is being paid in proportion to your level of productivity? Like, how would you go to a worker and say, because if you say, would they be hired for more somewhere else? That's not answering the question because that's still post hoc.
Double the amount of money. I mean, it's simple. Make double the amount of widgets. I'll pay you double the amount of money. That is how every worker is paid.
No, it's not. People get paid wages or minimum wage. They do not get paid with a direct proportion of their economic productivity.
People get minimum wage is minimal, and they stay on minimum wage for 6 months to a year. They don't go on minimum wage beyond that. Minimum wage is a marginal issue, and indeed, minimum wage does everything it can to keep some people out of the workforce completely. Minimum wage is a bogus
hold on, wait.
issue.
I wasn't inviting you to do a tirade against the minimum wage. I was saying the idea that people get paid with proportion to their productivity is not true. Work at any warehouse, you do not get paid per box that you ship. Work at any fast food place, you do not get paid per burger that you flip. You get paid a wage. It's not your productivity that you're being paid for.
The wage goes up when you produce more.
Not reliably. No, there are people who work harder and never get promoted. What about people who work very hard, but they don't get promoted because managerial skills aren't the same as line cook skills? You can have the hardest working line cook making less than people who worked less hard than them.
Managers produce more than laborers. That's why they get paid more.
Explain that to me in a non-post hoc way.
That's why you get a raise when you move up to be managers.
Explain that. Wait, that's post hoc. Wait, hold on. I need to actually get a thought out with this guy. Hold on. That's post hoc. Again, the reason managers make more money is because they're more productive, and we know that because they make more money.
As I said before, There's no such thing as a worker without a manager. There is no such thing as labor without somebody to organize
There's no
that
such thing as a
labor.
manager without people to
The
manage. That goes both
managerial
ways.
managers are
What
the
is a
ones
store with
making
just a manager in it? It's non-functioning.
there's no functioning business without managers.
There's no functioning business without workers. This is a circular argument. So I ask you again, how do you determine whether or not a person's wages are correlating to their productivity? Because you're literally arguing in a circle. They make X amount of money because they're X productive, and I know how productive they are because that's how much money they make. How do you determine if a person is being over or underpaid?
By how much they produce. I mean,
No,
it's
but
very
how do
simple.
you deter? Wait, hold on. Again, I need you to go in any business. I just any like anything, a
It's real
McDonald's,
simple.
and ask the worker there, do you get paid more the harder you work? Go to any Amazon warehouse, go to a jewelry store, go to anywhere on earth and ask them that question. Nobody
Yes.
gets paid according to their productivity. This is a made up ascription that you are making to post hoc justify the exorbitant wages of the 1%. That the reason they make so
No,
much is because they must be that much more productive. I reject this framework. Productivity
this is
is
a
not why people get paid. They get paid more because they're more powerful. Same as lords of the past.
This is complete detachment from reality, a complete detachment from what actually happens in the workforce, a complete detachment from understanding of economics and why it has to be that workers get paid based on how productive they are and how the market moves them in that direction and always has moved them to that direction. And the only reason workers make more money today than they did in the past is because they're more productive, not because their so-called overlords are more generous. Indeed, and the reason they get raised when they get into the management class, because managers are responsible for more production. They are responsible for more productivity. They're responsible for a greater amount of goods being produced, and therefore they're more valuable. They're more valuable to the business, therefore they get paid more. This has nothing to do with power. This has everything to do with economic value.
What about kings?
And the reason, what about what?
Kings, like monarchs, the money they made. You can't have a kingdom without a king. And
Kings
all of the economic activity of the serfs and lords beneath them was dependent on the existence. Wait, hold on, wait, please. You have to let me finish what I'm saying before you respond to it, please.
In
Wait,
force.
Yaron, if you could hold on a second,
Wait,
just let,
okay.
let him finish and then
I'm
respond.
just saying everything that you're describing right now works in a fiefdom. You have a king. The king makes quite a bit more than the serfs, let me tell you. I don't know the exact proportion there. I'm going to say it's a lot. The king makes a lot of money, but they are more productive. Kings work hard, and after all, without them, the kingdom wouldn't exist. And that's the metric by which you can't just have a bunch of marauding feudal villages without some sort of lordly protection. You need that like overarching system. What about like you could use this system that you have to justify any power structure. You could use it to justify you could use it to justify like the pharaohs. Why did X and Y make more money? Well, it's because they're more productive. And why are they more productive? Because they make more money.
Middle of my statement, but it turns out I get it. I mean, it's silly. It really is silly to bring up kingdoms and serfdoms and
Explain
so on.
how it's different from what you believe. How is my analogy inept compared to what you've described? Like the productivity equals wealth equals productivity example.
It's massively different. One, it's not voluntary. Kings did not ask people to come and work for them. Kings did not negotiate wages with them. Kings did not. No, they did not.
Wait, yeah, they did. Yeah.
Let me finish. I let you do your little rant, which is meaningless. Let me answer it. Right? It was not voluntary. It was not negotiable. It was not negotiated. Nobody could resign. You couldn't resign from the kingdom. If you worked for the king, you had to work for him. If not, there was jail and there was a sword.
What happens in America if you can't pay food?
In a voluntary society, in a corporation, there was no competition, and of course there was nothing being created. All there was redistribution. Nobody had an idea. Nobody actually organized and produced and created, and as a consequence,
yes,
on the kingdoms,
all that happened in feudal
life
societies.
Was static. Nothing ever happened. To compare authoritarian kingdoms or to compare authoritarianism to corporations and to capitalism is just silly. And by the way, every system that has tried to move us towards any form of socialism has exactly mimicked kingdoms. It's mimicked central planners.
I notice you completely ignored my question. The wealth productivity circular argument. Like you didn't actually explain how it's different with regards to feudalism. Also, what
There's no
happens in America if you
under
can't afford to buy
feudalism.
food?
There's
You
no
die and you
activity under
starve.
feudalism. There's no voluntary
Um,
exchange under feudalism, and there is no production under feudalism.
Yes, there. Wait, they
And
produce
there's
things
no
in
increased
feudalism.
productivity under feudalism,
Yes,
and
there was.
it's all coercive. It's all based on coercive.
Wait, this is wait.
Sorry,
This
real
suggests to
quick,
me.
Vosh.
Uh huh.
I
It's,
just
yeah,
technical stuff. Sorry about that. I have no idea what's going on with whereby I paid for a subscription and it's not working.
Oh,
But
it's
I sent
okay.
you
It's
guys
not a big
both a
deal.
link. Yeah, I'll have that sorted next time and I'll use a different service. But if you guys check your DMs, I sent you a link. We should get us going for another hour till we finish up.
All right,
Sorry
sure.
about that.
No worries.
Go
I
ahead,
just want to say, so the fact that you're saying there was no production under like medieval Europe tells me that you don't actually understand the economic systems we're referring to here. To you, like capitalism is just this deific, otherly system with a completely unique set of principles and conditions that have nothing to do with the economic systems that came before that. That's not true. Labor was organized by aristocrats. Wait, hold on, please. Labor was labor
system.
was organized. Wait, I need to finish my point. Labor was organized by aristocrats under feudalism. Work was done. Productivity was increased. Feudalism spanned a length of time in excess of 1,000 years. And over that course of time, cities and kingdoms rose and fell. Great works were achieved. Private enterprises were started, relied upon, well-funded both privately and publicly, and then died. Entire generations of mercantile and aristocratic classes presided over various economic subsystems. You say that the difference here, well, first of all, you say the difference here is a number of silly things that don't actually apply, like that there wasn't productivity or managerial organization under feudalism, which is not true. But then you say the difference is coercion. The difference is whether or not you actually had a choice. But we don't have a choice in your world either. In the world you want, you either work or you starve. In the which, by the way, is a lethal process, starving to death. In the world that the kings and queens orchestrated, you either work for them or you died. So you die by the sword or you die by malnutrition, I suppose. You get that choice either way. The only solution to this, the true solution, is to give the worker, the working class, the ability to fairly dictate their wages. Have a seat at the bargaining table. And that's what unions do. The other solution is a welfare state, which is the reason why here in America, you don't starve if you don't work. Because through the expense of our taxpayers, we ensure that people who are going through rough times are able to survive for a little bit, or for their whole life if they need to, off of welfare. A service that, by the way, Ayn Rand also benefited from. Welfare allows people the freedom to not work if they would rather not. And that's why I'm pro-welfare state. That's why I'm pro-union. I'm giving people the freedom to not work if they don't want to. And if they do want to work, the freedom to actually argue their wages fairly against the vastly more powerful corporations they're opposed against.
Yaron, if you use the same link I sent you before, you should be able to join back in on video.
The same link?
Yep.
All right.
Right.
Okay, I think I'm
So
on.
about that, guys.
right.
Go ahead.
One second. Let me just get this going. Close that window. So let's start with feudalism. Yes, for 1,000 years there was feudalism. Yes, there was some production going on, but in comparison to capitalism, it was puny, small, insignificant. Quality of life, standard of living, life expectancy barely budged for 1,000 years. Yes, some things rose, some things fell. But if you look at life expectancy over those 1,000 years, barely moved. If you looked at quality and standard of living, barely moved. And by the way, Marx wrote about this. This is not even, a good Marxist doesn't even dispute this fact. Feudalism did very little to forward human life. Capitalism, wow, 300x median wages, and that's nothing as compared to standard of living, quality of life, or life expectancy. So capitalism is a sea change, a dramatic revolution, something that had never existed before and completely different. And it should be treated that way. It's not a continuation of feudalism. It is a complete and utter break with feudalism to produce a society that is light years better than anything feudalism could have even dreamed of. Now, the fact is that it's not me dictating the choice between work or die. It is reality dictating the choice between work or die.
So you're the king.
The fact is that in reality, you either cultivated your farm, grew the vegetables you needed to eat, or you died. You either worked for a blacksmith or did some work somewhere, someplace, or you died. The fact is that you have to produce in order to live. That is an existential, metaphysical reality.
Then why do you have a problem with kings? They say work or die. You say they're going to die anyway. What's the difference? Why do you even care about coercion if it's just a process?
Because kings didn't give you the choice of work or die. Kings gave you the choice of doing their work or die. That is, they are authoritarians.
So if
right?
you can choose your king, then it's okay?
No, of course not.
Because that's what we live in today. You can choose your king. The many businesses around.
No, you don't choose your king. You choose what kind of productive work to do. You choose what kind of productive work you do, and you should, if you were honest, thank the people for creating the products, giving you an opportunity to actually engage in the work. Because otherwise, you would have to go back 500 years to where you actually worked on a farm.
Thank the king for the opportunity to work on his land. Yeah.
No, even if you had your land, let's say you lived in a place that didn't have a king and you actually worked your land and you ate your food and you got to eat it and you died at the age of, 29, 30, and half your kids died before the age of 10. And you lived a miserable life with no electricity and no Google and no iPhone and no air conditioning. And it was pathetic. Now you get to choose among many people who provide you with work that is shorter than working on a farm, that is much more productive and much more life enhancing than working on a farm, that gives you a lot more leisure time than working on a farm, that gives you the ability in the evening to go to restaurants and enjoy vacations rather than working on a farm. And yes, you should thank the great capitalists, the great entrepreneurs, the great businessmen for creating a world in which workers who couldn't build an automobile, who couldn't actually create an iPhone, they have the opportunity to drive an automobile, to use an iPhone, to have Google, in spite of the fact that none of them could have invented Google. Instead of admiring and respecting the people who actually made the modern world, who made our standard of living, who made our quality of life, instead of that, you want to compare them to barbaric kings who used the sword, who used violence against other people. These people didn't use violence. They created a world that is better for all of us. We're using a platform. I don't know what this platform is, but using technology that was created by specific people, individuals, who got paid a lot of money in order to create these particular products. And no matter how much we earn, we can use these products for free. And instead of thanking those people, we want to complain and gang up against them and take their wealth and redistribute it.
So
that is the essence of evil and immorality.
The fact that we live in a more economically and technologically productive time has nothing to do with the fundamental ethical question of resource distribution. So I'll ignore that. It's fun. Wait, hold on, really quick. It's funny because there are so many incredible hypocrisies here. First of all, wait, you just went on a whole thing.
Wait, 1 second, Yaron.
Needed in a certain way. You can't just start from, we have this world, now let's divvy up the products. Who made this world? Who created this world?
Hold on. Hold on. It's funny because earlier I pointed out that all of the technological innovations you were celebrating and praising CEOs for were actually made by engineers. The CEOs were the idea. Hold on, Yaron, please.
We can actually use.
The CEOs were the idea guys, a very valuable thing in the R&D field, by the way. So it's funny because earlier I got you to admit that, yeah, we all contribute. You know, we all put in our labor to make these products. But then what do you go right back to doing 30 minutes later? You should thank the CEOs for building the world that you have the pleasure of living in. You're a bootlicker, man. You claim to be anti-authoritarian, but all you're doing is ascribing to nature the logic of kings and queens of the past. Before, you worked for them or they killed you. Now you say, oh, it's just natural that you work or die. Sure, you get a choice in your workplace, a choice in kings, but then you say, at least they're nicer. Do you know why the kings today are nicer? Because unions fought for labor laws. The 40-hour work week that you said makes us better than the kings of old, fought for by unions. The holidays that you claim make us better than the kings of old, fought for by unions. All of the reasons why work today is better than work then were because of people like me fighting against people like you. I noticed, by the way, that you still haven't answered for the fundamental circular question, how do you determine productivity when you're arguing that productivity is a metric which is determined by your wealth or your income, and then the income determines your productivity, the productivity is determined by your wealth? What does this mean? This argument works just fine with the kings. You say the kings didn't oversee labor? Yes, they did. You say the kings didn't oversee economic production. Yes, they did. You say that the kings didn't factor coercion into their, decision making. Well, it seems you don't either, because you're just saying, let nature be the king. You work or you die. I reject this because I do believe in positive freedom. A welfare state, so no man need work unless they want to, and fair wages and unions. So when a man does work, they're paid for their labor, not by this abstract, esoteric, self-justifying productivity you keep referring to. By the way, go into any warehouse, everyone there is being paid the same wage. You ask them, do all you do the same amount of work? No. Not by this metric, but rather by what workers can compel their employers to give them. What they have, the bargaining power that we give them. That's what earned us all of these niceties you ascribe to the beneficence of CEOs. People like me.
I don't ascribe it to the beneficence of CEOs. I ascribe it to the beneficence of those people who produced the wealth that we have around us, from CEOs to innovators to entrepreneurs to engineers, all the way down to the workers.
Did CEOs fight for worker rights back at the beginning of the 20th century? Wait, answer that. Did CEOs fight for worker rights like the 40-hour work week and holidays and 5-day work weeks?
It was first introduced, I think it was in New England, by private companies before unions fought for it. Unions picked up that banner after that. And
you're actually saying it then, the beneficence of CEOs. No, private corporations were not fighting for a nationwide adoption of a 40-hour work week. That is absolutely not true.
Through negotiations, workers and unions and employees arrived at a 40 work week. Unfortunately, the government got involved and now it's established that as law. It shouldn't be. It should continue to be negotiated. It should continue to be negotiated between workers in a free society. You
don't even want the niceties that you say are the reason why working today is better than working for a king.
What's that?
You say like working today is better. You don't even want work today to be better than work was underneath kings. If it weren't for those labor laws passed, people would go back to working the 80 to 100-hour work weeks that were common during the Industrial Revolution. We fought to make the world better.
That is complete and utter nonsense. The reason work weeks are shorter is because people are far more productive, because once people receive wealth...
No, it's because they lobby the government. Unions lobby the government. You're just lying right now.
That is just not true. The fact is that as people got more productive, they became more valuable. Therefore, they negotiated higher salaries. Therefore, they negotiated shorter work weeks. That is a negotiation.
No, they didn't. They passed a law from the government. It wasn't a negotiation. They didn't have unions.
The government comes in after the fact and instituted laws after those habits had already been established within a society.
You're objectively I'm looking right now at a historical timetable of the 40-hour work week. You're just incorrect. It was unions, labor unions, working together to organize their people to pressure politicians. This was not some all the corporations came together and recognized with such benevolence that workers were more productive and therefore didn't need to work 100-hour work weeks. You're just lying. This is bootlicking, man. You're reframing history in a way to support the most privileged people in our society. This isn't pro-freedom. You would be like the lapdog of the king 300 years ago. I hope you know that. You would have been a loyalist during the American Revolution. You would have said that the American colonies were the God-given right of the English crown, and that by fighting against that, all you were doing were rejecting the natural workforces that led to the colonization of the New World. Okay? Why would you lie about this stuff?
Very clever, Bosch. I mean, you're the one who sides with authoritarianism. You're the ones who side with government, forcing workers and forcing employers to set the terms rather than people in voluntary transactions deciding what the terms of the deal should be.
I'm liking these voluntary 80 to 100-hour work weeks and the voluntary child labor at the time that was common.
Replace the king with the dictatorship of the proletarian. You're the one who would like to replace the king with enslaving those of us who happen to be more productive than others, with enslaving those of us who actually produce, so that we can feed parasites who do not want to work. Or people who don't want to work and yet want to receive my labor, the product of my labor. That is the definition of parasite.
Out of curiosity, right? What's your opinion on child labor?
People should not be required to work. You said before people should be able to get an income whether they work or not. Now, how is that not parasitic on the people who do work, whether they're laborers or not? Because it is their money that has to feed the people who are not working. So you are
As a
for
productive person, I am
parasite.
honored that my tax dollars go to allow other people to live dignified lives.
You can give all your productive earnings to those people voluntarily. I don't want to give it to them, but you want to use coercion. You want to use force. You want to use the authoritarian power of the state to force me to pursue your values.
So
Because you don't care.
this is how
You don't
every
care.
conversation with an
You don't
objectivist
care
goes.
about- no.
This is wait, hold on.
It's
This is how
conversation.
every convo with an objectivist goes, with them screaming that I don't have the right to make the world a better place. Like that's wait, hold on, hold on. Hold on. The free association, that you were referring to beforehand. Wait, I appeal to the moderator again. I feel like I can't.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Yaron. If you want to let him finish, please.
The free association that you were referring to before labor laws, children worked 12 hours a day. Human beings will work 80 to 100-hour work weeks. They were stacked up in slum tenements with living conditions exponentially worse. Wait, stop. Wait, please. Okay. The voluntary association you're referring to made people miserable and poor, and then the tyrannical hand of the government waved it by, and all of a sudden people's lives get significantly better. My vision of a good world is not dictated by what do you want? Ultimate freedom to enslave and oppress your fellow human? No. My vision of a good world is one where people are free. And the positive freedom you claim to value is the freedom to live life outside the pressures of an autocratic economic system. And what is 80 to 100 hours work week but autocratic? What freedom is there in a life where you work 14 hours a day? There is no freedom. No matter how voluntary that exchange, no matter your right to leave that job, no matter your right to pack up your things and leave, there is no freedom in that job. The freedom you're fighting for is a fake freedom, a freedom to control and dominate others for wealth. The freedom I'm advocating for, if you would just pay your taxes, is the freedom for human beings to live a life that would have been considered utopian to humans 100 years ago. We are so productive, our society is so incredibly economically privileged that we are capable of sustaining people who otherwise wouldn't be able to work. The disabled, the needy, we can give them dignified existences, and all it costs us is a fraction of the significantly higher wages we have now. I know the idea of making the world a better place must seem like an incredibly silly thing to an objectivist.
And how productive the society is, how wealthy the society is. How did we become so productive, and how
Labor, workers.
Because of labor. It's not at all because of labor. Labor's always existed. 2,000, 5,000, 100,000 years, there's been labor. The only time in human history where we've actually become productive is when
laborers built the factories. Engineers engineered the factories. We built the steam engine. Who did? Engineers, not CEOs. Oil? Who mined for that oil? CEOs? No, workers did.
You can't keep interrupting. You can't keep interrupting and then claim the higher ground here. You can't go off and not let me talk. You keep repeating the same nonsense over and over again. That doesn't make it true. It's a tactic the left uses all the time. They repeat a lie over and over and over again. And it becomes so embedded in the culture that everybody just assumes it's true. It's like the productivity wages, story. By the way, just Google debunking the productivity pay gap, economics from the topdown.com. And
I'm familiar with that
it goes
paper.
item by item, debunking the mythology. But you see people like Vosh repeat it so often, the mythology of it, repeat it so often that people get it. Child labor was declining under capitalism. Number of hours worked was declining under capitalism. And you can see that in country after country after country. When wealth reaches a certain level, that's when government steps in and passes laws. Once all of this declines have happened already, once it's already institutionalized into the culture, once it's already been, let me finish. Once it's already been negotiated, then you get it. The fact is that we are so rich today because of entrepreneurs, because of capitalists. I don't know any engineers, even engineers in biotech, who are willing to work at the company without getting paid. Somebody has to pay them. Somebody has to pay them for 10 years before there's a product, before they ever can produce any kind of income. So engineers get paid. They get paid better than the worker in the ground. Vosh admitted that engineers produce a lot. Yes, they do produce a lot. That's why they get paid more than the guy who does the assembly, because the guy who does the assembly doesn't produce a lot. He isn't that productive. The engineer is a lot more productive. And how do I tell? Because the engineer builds the machine. The worker can only put stuff together. The worker's replaceable, the engineer's not. And as you go up the chain of managerial skill, you get higher and higher wages because they control more, because they have more productivity. Now, to compare that to feudal society shows you know nothing about production. You don't understand how production works. You don't understand how innovation happens, how entrepreneurs happen. The problem with leftists is they take the wealth that exists today and they think it came out of nowhere. They think it just was imagined and just popped out of the sky. You know, in that sense, they're much worse than Marx, because at least Marx had an appreciation for capitalism. He understood that capitalism is what produced the wealth, that you had to indeed have capitalism in order to produce the wealth. He then goes off the rails in terms of his understanding of capitalism and in terms of interpretation of exploitation. Now, let's go to the question of exploitation. What happened before capitalism? What were people doing?
You're not answering any of my questions.
poor.
You just run past them and go back to your talking points.
They were barely, I'm answering the questions that you asked. You asked what happens before capitalism.
No, I know. I know what happened before capitalism. I'm asking, how does your productivity equals income equals productivity metric not also apply to feudalists, now that you've fundamentally admitted that you don't mind basically any of the coercive elements that old feudal labor entailed?
As I said, I object to all coercion, all coercion. I object to everything involved in feudalism. Feudalism
But
was
work or
not
die. Is that not coercion? Work or die? How
No,
what is
it's
more
not.
coercive than that?
Work and die. I'm not saying I am going to kill you if you don't work. I'm saying
You'll
the
just
fact
let
of
them die.
reality is, I'm saying, Vosh, let me finish. I'm saying the fact of reality is that if you don't work, if you don't produce the things necessary for your existence, you will die.
No, it's not.
That is a-
Welfare state. We
that is
fixed
a
it.
metaphor.
We fixed that problem with the
Somebody
welfare
can-
state.
Somebody can help you, but the only reasons the welfare state requires force, coercion, authoritarianism be applied to some people in order to feed other people.
To remove coercion.
All the welfare state creates is a parasitical state, and it hurts the people who receive welfare as much as it hurts the people who.
Do you want the state to still maintain the defense of property rights?
Yes, absolutely.
So you're saying that I need to pay my taxes. You're a CEO, aren't
No,
you?
you should pay taxes unless you want to. I believe in voluntary taxation. I don't believe in coercion. I've said that.
So if you think
I
that
don't believe
if you think that humans are civically minded enough to voluntarily pay their taxes to the minarchist
I do.
state you're referring to, why don't you
I do.
also believe humans will be civically minded enough to work in spite of the existence of a welfare state? In fact, studies have been done. The existence of a welfare state doesn't decrease the
They didn't
the
say that people
availability
would
of labor.
I didn't say people wouldn't work under welfare state. You said so. You
If
said that
they don't
people
want to, then sure.
You said it. You said if they don't want to, they shouldn't have to work. They should live off of my dime. They should live off of my work. They should be able to take my money and live off of it. I'm just
Yes,
pointing out
because you
that
live
that
off
is
their
cruel.
dime too.
That is violence against me, and that is you imposing your values, your view of the world on me.
You already
I am-
live off their labor.
I'm saying if you want to create such a society, if you want to create a society in which everybody gets according to their need from each according to his ability, you can go and create a commune within my world, and nobody will stop you from doing that. You can go and get 100 people
In
together.
your world,
and you
people would
can
die
live
if they
miserable.
couldn't find work. That's your
You can live
world.
No, you can get some land. You can grow
Oh,
your
just
stuff.
just get some land. If you can't find work, you just get some land.
can
Where?
create-
Where
can-
in America today? Point to me on a map.
Come
Where
on.
can you just get some
Give
land?
me a break. You could get a wealthy socialist to fund you and buy some land. You could start a
Oh.
co-op. You could start a co-op. You could compete.
You need
with,
money to start a
with-
co-op, and I don't
these-
think there are that many wealthy socialists around to subsist your existence. If you can't work in your world, you starve to death. Do not make claims to me that I am the one advocating for
You don't work in my
you-
world.
you-
Either somebody helps you or you starve to death. My point
We
is, my
solved
point about
one of the
starving to death-
greatest problems in
my-
human society, and you want to go back to the way it was before. We made it so that you don't starve if you don't
back to
work.
the way it was before, because I believe people will work. I believe people work. I believe people become productive. And I believe in a capitalist society, people would be much richer than they are today. The poor would be much better off than they are today. And indeed,
Like
they would be
200
much
years ago,
better-
right?
I believe that in your world, as has been proven by every attempt in history to try it,
Like in
in your
1820s
world,
America?
like Venezuela, 1920s America was not your world. Give me a break.
No. I'm saying your world without unions and without the government imposing work laws back in the 1820s. when we had 80 to 100-hour work weeks and children worked and there was no OSHA, so people died all the times? You know?
Children do before, what did children do in 1730, in 1720?
Are you?
What did children
Do you think that I'm defending feudalism?
No,
wait,
no.
wait, hold on. Do you wait? Hold on. Wait, that was wait. Hold on. That was a complete pivot. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. The world you're advocating for.
Children has always worked. I'm saying capitalism is the only system in all of human history that has liberated children
because
from work.
unions advocated for it.
Unions,
yes.
No, because of increased productivity of labor.
No, that's a complete lie.
Let me finish the point. Moderator, just a point here. As productivity of labor increased during the 19th century, wages increased during the 19th century. Even before unions were established, wages were increasing. As wages increased during the 19th century, parents pulled their kids out of school, out of the workforce, and sent them to school because now the parents could afford to.
So you can actually look at the stats on this. Again, there are like numbers on this.
Please, can you let him finish, Ben?
Let me finish. And you can see this in every developing country. As the parent is earning enough money, they pull their kids out of the labor force and they send them to school. Then at some critical mass point, government steps in and makes child labor illegal. But by the time they make child labor illegal, capitalism has already eradicated child labor. That has happened in every single country that has laws against child labor. It starts out with capitalism eradicating it. It's the same with work safety. Work safety declines because of capitalism. And then you get OSHA. And guess what? It continues to decline at about the same, improve at about the same rate it was improving under capitalism. The same thing happens with wages. Wages are increasing, unions step in, wages continue to increasing. And then government steps in and wages continue to increase, but they actually increase at slower rates than they do if capitalism...
In spite of all evidence available on the subject.
Sure.
Contrary to available evidence. So yeah, this is...
Look at unions in capitalist America.
I've actually heard this argument before, and it was unironically when I was reading 1984. The totalitarian government of Oceania would rewrite books constantly to ascribe to the party greater and greater inventions in the past. That they invented the helicopter, and then they invented the plane, and then they invented the train, etc. So what you are doing right now, hold on, what you're doing right now is providing demonstrably false arguments in favor of the narrative that everything good... Stop, wait, hold on. That everything good today is because of the beneficence of capitalism and CEOs, when everything you're saying is objectively wrong. Child labor was popular and robust until it was outlawed, following massive opposition from people like you 100 years ago. 80 to 100-hour work weeks were incredibly popular and widely used until federal government stepped in and made it illegal to do so. Wages stagnated substantially until unions rose to prominence during the early 20th century and started really fighting for collective bargaining. This is all demonstrable. It is all factually evident. And it makes me, well, hold on, wait, please. It really does give me the impression that I'm arguing with a deeply unserious person. I guess I should expect this from an objectivist. When you're this willing to lie about history in order to facilitate the bootlicking narrative that everything good in the universe can be ascribed due to CEOs. But I tell you, that increase in productivity... Hold on. That increase in...
Yaron, please give him
I'm almost done. That increase in productivity that you ascribe to capitalism, tell me, who built and invented the loom? Who invented the steam engine? Who mined the coal? Who built and designed the factories? Who organized the assembly lines? Who coordinated the distribution of products? Who built the storefronts in which these products were sold? Every single element of the Industrial Revolution, which is the reason why we skyrocketed, can be attributed back to workers. CEOs, do they do nothing? No, and I've never said they do nothing. But your narrative that they do everything, and that every God-given grace that lands upon their feet, every pile of gold, every sacrifice, all of it is deserved because anything they have must be deserved because they have it. It must be deserved. Of course they deserve it. They have it. Is a lie. The world around us, including the technology we're using to talk right now, was built by...
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Hello?
I can't hear you, Bosh. You muted yourself. Well, somebody muted you.
Hello?
I can't hear you.
I'm hearing it.
Get.
Oh, God.
Wait.
I can hear you.
guess
Maybe others can. I couldn't hear you. But that's okay.
Wait, there's an echo. Wait, did you hit the unmute button on your whereby by chance?
I hit my mute button on the other one.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Okay. So let me refer people to a book. It's always good. Go do a read. Not by an objectivist, so don't worry. It's called Out of Poverty: Sweatshops in the Global Economy. It was published by Cambridge Studies, so not some third-rate publisher. It's Cambridge, I think, University Press. Yes, Cambridge Studies in Economics, Ethics, and Society. Go look at the book, and you'll discover that everything Vosh just said is just not true. It's just a lie. And you can tell he's lying because even what he says about me is being. He says, I said this. I did not say that CEOs produce everything. I say CEOs produce more than others. That's why they earn more than others. I didn't say they produced everything. I said that they are the most important cog, if you will, in this big machine. That's why they get the biggest piece of what is being produced, because they're the most important. But that doesn't mean they're the only piece. But, he's distorting what I say. Why wouldn't he distort the history? It would go Out of Poverty: Sweatshops in the Global Economy. It's an excellent book about child labor and all these issues we just talked about. And you'll get the actual facts of history and what actually happened in the past. Look, the fact is that every place that has attempted to take from those who actually produce the most, to give to those that don't produce as much, has either become poor, has led ultimately to death and destruction, has led to oppression, and has led to authoritarianism. You can look at Venezuela right now as a great example of this. It's not an accident that turning farming into workers' collectives was one of the first things that Chavez did. And indeed, Venezuela went from a breadbasket.
Why are we talking about Venezuela?
I'm talking about Venezuela. It's an example of what you want.
What do I want?
It's an example you are advocating.
I've just advocated for a welfare state and unions.
It's an example for workers' co-ops.
I've just talked about welfare states and unions.
No, you're arguing as a unions, as a bridge to workers' co-ops. You've said this a number of times, that ultimately what you would like to see are workers' co-ops, and workers' co-ops are the ideal. Well, workers' co-ops
ultimately, past that, I want communism. So
farming. They worked wonderfully in communist China when farming. They produce zero. They produce starvation and death. That's what workers' co-ops produce.
Okay.
If we had
in spite of the data on the subject,
we would have nothing. We would have nothing of the wealth that we have today. None of the inventions, none of the productivity, none of the wealth, none of the quality of life, standard of living, life expansion that we've had over the last 250 years would have existed. All of this requires unique minds being able to be free, to imagine, to organize, and to produce, and to fail, to learn from those failures, to build, and to create. That's and to employ people, which, by the way, is a voluntary exchange. People don't have to work. People can go back to what they did before, which is farm. They can go back, they can farm. Indeed, small farms all over America still exist. They can farm, they can live a farmer's life, they can cut themselves off on the grid if they want, right? And they can live their own life producing their own things for themselves. If that's the kind of life Voss wants us all to go back to, that's the kind of life he would like us to have. Because the wealth that we have today that he takes for granted, that he assumes just it came here because people, I mean, all the things that he listed before.
Workers produced it, yeah.
The assembly line was not a worker creation. Assembly line was an idea of Ford.
Who built the assembly line?
The idea. He put it into motion. A worker didn't one day wake up and say, "Oh, I've got an idea. Why don't we create an assembly line?" It was actually Henry Ford that did that.
Who built the assembly line?
It was not a creation of a worker. It was a creation of an engineer who then staked capital to try to build a company that produced an automobile, right? That he hired people to come and assemble things for him. So all of production depends on ideas, entrepreneurs, managers, and capitalists, all in a relationship, a contractual relationship, then engaging in contractual relationships with workers in order to produce stuff. Any other form of human organization is a form that results in authoritarian death and destruction. Now, with regard to the welfare state is kind of a mixed state where you allow people some freedom, and then you take some of their money away and you hand it over to the people you choose to hand it over to, because you have real power. This is the real power. The real power in our society is in the hands of the people who get to allocate the goodies that they get to steal from some people. It's not up to me and you to decide who we want to help, how we want to help them. It's some bureaucrat who gets to decide how much of our wealth gets taken away and who they get to decide to help. So I would like to return the decision who to help to me and you, to make voluntarily through charity, through voluntary engagement, rather to have the state do it. I would like individuals to be able to pursue their happiness free of the state taking stuff from them and free of the state giving them stuff. I don't want the state giving stuff to corporations, to unions, or to whoever they feel like giving it to.
Okay.
So real quick,
can I give a closing statement? Are we doing closing statements?
Yeah, I was actually just going to say we go to closing statements, but I mean, I'm surprised at how peaceful this has been. I thought this was going to be a contentious debate.
Oh yeah, nothing but smiles and agreement here. Let's see if we can't stir it up a little bit. Okay. So first of all, no, Henry Ford did not actually invent the assembly line. The first recorded instance that I can find of something that used the logic and assembly method of an assembly line was the Venetian Arsenal in, you guessed it, Venice in 1104. It was owned by the state and operated by construction workers and sea yard workers. It had a channel where the boats would slide down on a sloop and a rack, and then the parts of the ship would be affixed by different men who all had different jobs and responsibilities. What Henry Ford did was he was one of the first people to popularize the model in the industrial era with the machines he had at the time, using machines built by workers and then laying out plans that were later fulfilled by workers. Oh, sorry. By laying out plans, what I actually means is he laid out plans that his engineers designed. See, Henry Ford didn't actually go ahead and write a blueprint for how an assembly line would be produced. No, that would require work. He instead handed it off to highly talented engineers who he paid, by the way, 100th of what he made, and then they made it happen. He was an idea guy, an idea that was had 800 years ago. Anyway, with that fun little aside thrown back, I feel like the difference in our ideologies is as evident as the obvious delusions that we have to accept in order to buy them. If you go with Yaron's world, here's what you have to do. First, you work or you die, in spite of the fact that we don't have to do that here in our current world. That's the world that you get to live in if you go with him. Give more power to the people who were fighting for child labor, and less power to the unions that fought against it. Give more power to the corporations that were fighting for the 80 to 100-hour work week, and less power to the unions that fought against it. Everything good in life, all of the union created workplace benefits that you enjoy, take those away. Those are coercive somehow, even though they lead to everyone in America having more freedom. It violates some abstract coercive principle that is known only to objectivists, the way bees can see ultraviolet light. I'm afraid I just can't see it. We live today in the freest time in history, not because CEOs have more power than ever before to stomp on the little guy, but because we developed democratic states that allow us to take the ungodly wealth that modern economic systems produce, through workers, thank you, and redistribute it in ways that maximize human happiness. Because after all, that's what I care about. It's humans being happy, not some weird, esoteric, self-referential definition of coercion that can't even account for the existence of positive freedoms. A man exiled to the middle of the Sahara Desert with no laws restricting him is free in the truest sense, free to die of dehydration within 12 hours. Not a freedom I'm interested in. Real freedom means you have the ability to pursue that which you want, and that is not a freedom that you are going to get while under the boot of the people that Yaron Brook so fervently idolizes. There's really just no getting around this. Whether you're looking at the dishonesty with the efficacy of unions or how wages come to be, or this, again, this self-referential productivity equals wages equals productivity, which I've asked like 20 times. How do you even check for that? And I can't get an answer to it because it doesn't mean anything. Again, go to any workplace. Ask all the people making minimum wage, hey, do you all work the same amount? No. Does the hardest worker always get promoted to managerial position? No. How do you even determine this? Do CEOs really work 300 times as hard as the people beneath them? Are they really 300 times as productive? I don't know, but they get paid 300 times as much, so I guess they must be. This is a system designed to manufacture human misery, and it's the reason why I go hard in it. I don't have a problem with CEOs working hard to invest money, you know? If I wasn't so lazy, I probably would have formed an LLC myself. I'm just lazy, so I haven't. The principle isn't something that I'm against. Use your capital in ways that benefit the human species. Phenomenal, fantastic. But that does not mean you have infinite power to trample over the people beneath you. Much in the same way, I don't have a problem with people homesteading and making cool houses out in the forest. I do have a problem with kings and queens annexing entire colonial provinces and brutally, oppressing the people who lived there previously. It's not about the principle. It's about how far are you going to let people with power run away with that power. And for me, the answer is not very far at all. Less far than what they get today. Very short distance we're going to let them run. And it's going to be for all our benefits. That's all I got.
All right, you're on.
Sure, abstract coercion. Just try not paying your taxes and you'll discover how abstract that coercion is. They'll drag you into court. If you still don't pay your taxes, they'll drag you to jail. That's pretty coercive, I would say. Try not following the labor laws as written. They will drag you into court, and if you still oppose them, they will drag you into jail. I would say that's about as concrete, real coercion as one can imagine. Ford, by the way, was an engineer. He was a particularly good engineer who also had organizational skills. He was more productive than other engineers because he had the ability to organize other engineers. They did not, and therefore he could create a Ford Motor Company where they could not, and that's why he made X percentage more than they made. Yes, because he was more productive. It's interesting. Again, the socialists always argue that the economic system just produced the wealth. It just came into being as if it's some kind of miracle, manna dropped down from heaven by God. No. The modern system is a system of entrepreneurship. It's a system of capitalism. It's a system of people investing money into CEOs, that awful human beings, into entrepreneurs, into people with ideas, into people who can organize production. Organizing production, I know it sounds trivial. Organization, that's easy. Anybody can do it. I mean, I wish Vosh could go and be a CEO for one day. I mean, they'd wipe him out. He'd be wiped out. He couldn't handle it because the amount, and I'm not talking about the number of hours of work. I mean, the number of hours of work are intense. That's not the point. It's not how hard you work. It's how smart you work. Sure, it's not true that the hardest worker is the one who gets paid the most. It's the most productive worker who gets paid the most. The two are not synonymous. That is, you can work hard and be stupid, or you can work slow and be smart and produce more. It's a question of how many widgets do you make? Does everybody know who the most productive employee on a shop floor is? Absolutely. Just ask any employee. They know who the most productive, not the hardest worker, who the most productive worker is, who's the best at producing hamburgers, who's the best at customer service, who's the best stacker in the warehouse, who's the best engineer at getting that blueprint on time for the new machine that's going to be produced. So no, of course, wages are a consequence of productiveness. So they take the system for granted, the system that is, for the most part, produced all this amazing wealth. And Vosh is right. We live in a time of unbelievable wealth. We live in a time where, yeah, you could take the money from some people and give it to others, and everybody will be would live at a much higher standard of living for a while, until the people who actually produce the wealth maybe said, maybe I don't want to produce it anymore. I encourage you to read Atlas Shrugged, by the way, a book about exactly that. What happens when people who actually produce the wealth stop producing it and what happens in society. A fictional book, granted. So you take for granted the wealth produced by the entrepreneurs and the capitalists. And then your starting point is that we already have this wealth and lets you distribute it without thinking for a minute about how we're going to produce wealth in the future, about how we're going to sustain the system, about how you keep growing the system, how you keep perpetuating the system. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. So, yes, look at the fundamental principles behind our ideas. The fundamental principle that I advocate for is for individuals to be free of coercion, abstract coercion, which turns into real coercion, all coercion, free of coercion, free to engage in activities without an authority, without anybody using force against you, free to transact with other people. And if you're lazy, like Vosh, then you're not going to make a lot of money. That's fine. You're going to make enough to live well, but just not live super well. If you're just as smart as Vosh, but even, more hardworking than him, then you'll make more money than Vosh. And maybe some of you are not even in this for the money. Maybe you're super productive, but you're in an area that is not about making money. Like, I don't know, being a teacher. Maybe you're an excellent teacher, but you'll never make a lot of money. Because at the end of the day, it's not about money. The capitalist just said that. It's not about the money. You might be an excellent teacher and benefit from it because you love teaching. And you've given up. You might give up a lot of money in order to pick up the teaching. The point is that inequality, that money, that how much you make is not the relevant factor. The relevant factor is freedom. Freedom. Right. Freedom from coercion. One last sentence. And inequality is not a bug of freedom. It's a feature. It's what happens when you leave people free. They produce at different levels, and inequality is what you get when people are free. Thank you.
All right. So work hard, work smart. Unfortunately, I worked a little dumb here. Sorry, guys, about the hiccup with whereby. It's yelling at me, says we got 3 minutes, but thank you guys. Also, I got to say, whoever did that little troll, whoever tried joining under the name Among Sussy, you won. Good job, man. That was
had to be one of mine. I'm sorry.
Hey, they made a boomer out of me. They won. But thank both you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. I know it got heated, but this was a good discussion. I appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed either of these, please check out Vosh, Vaush. If you Google Vosh, you'll find it on his Twitch, his YouTube, and YARON BROOK, YARON BROOK. If you if you go ahead and Google that, you'll find his Twitch. I'm sorry, no, you don't have Twitch. You have his YouTube, and then you have a daily show, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then for us guys, if you enjoyed this, please do check us out. Discord.gg/bluepolitics and Twitch.tv/bluepolitics. And right after this, we're going to be going into a 24-hour charity stream raising money for ODS. I'm sorry, OSD, Operation Supply Drop. So yeah, if you guys would like, please join the Twitch stream. The link for the charity donations is in there. I would really appreciate the help.
Absolutely. That's awesome of you. Thank you. And YARON BROOK, thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tim. Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone take care.
You guys have a good one.
Tempest, keep this next part in. This guy was a finance professor for 7 years and won awards during that time. This is like the most rational objectivist that I think exists, and that was how the conversation went. Oh my god. I've never talked with an actual like full-on objectivist before. Oh man. Okay, hold on. I think we did fine there. Okay. Yeah, that was the most rational objectivist there was. I never got an answer to the productivity thing. It was so self-referential. It was like, oh yeah, of course, but like, go to like any workplace. The most productive people don't get paid more. That's not how it works. Productivity isn't the metric that we use to determine wages in a capitalist society. That's just not how we do it. The problem is there were so many things that I wanted to dive into, but I couldn't because A, he rambles, and B, it didn't feel like he was answering my questions. I wanted to talk more about the definition of productivity that I was using when I talked about wages not keeping up with productivity, because there is bad data out there on it that I've actually referred to on stream and called bad data before. That chart, that graph people always cite with wages not keeping up with productivity, it's not exactly the metric that I'm using. The metric that I'm using would be more accurately described as the way in which median wages don't keep up with the proportional wealth that is distributed between the working class and the bourgeois. How CEO compensation goes up and up and up and up and up, but worker compensation doesn't anywhere near the same degree of proportionality, which means that a lot of productivity is being siphoned off, therefore meaning median wages don't keep up. But I didn't even get a chance to talk about it. Oh god, and I had a dig that I wanted to get in there too. When he recommended Atlas Shrugged, I was going to be like, oh god, I'm like shower argumenting right now, but like, I was going to say that, it's so funny to me that you were to write a piece of fiction where in a world where CEOs quit their jobs and people cared, whereas when workers quit their jobs, it's called a general strike, and it makes CEOs quiver in their boots, you know? If all the CEOs in the world took like a month off, honestly, I really think the economy wouldn't be affected that much. Seriously, I really don't think so. The stockholders would just appoint another person, like in an interim period. Like, I really don't think that much would be affected, you know? Like, it wouldn't have no effect. But if all the workers took a month off, the world would end. If all the workers took a month off, people would be dying in the street. This is like it would be like an apocalypse level event. If all the workers, if all the farmers, all the service workers, all the distribution people, it would be over. Like, it'd be over. Anyway, man, are there any like? Also, yeah, he keeps saying that I think value is just magically created when I keep saying over and over and over and over again that it's created by the workers. And then he's like, actually, all the incredible value under capitalism is created by CEOs being the ideas guys. This guy is an award-winning finance professor. What am I supposed to do? He is like, you lefties and your magical unicorn-like esoteric understanding of value. Actually, value is created by CEOs having great ideas. Like, yeah. Yeah, the most rational objectivist professor, you know? Uh, but you all get me, right? I actually think that went really well. By the way, I'm man enough to own it. I completely lied about not understanding time zones. I just completely forgot about the debate like an asshole. I was laying in bed playing with Artemy, like bouncing him on my chest when Hyena walked in, and Hyena was like, I just got a Discord message. It says you forgot something. And oh. The only critique would be you insisting that. Wait, hold on. The only critique would you be insisting there isn't a strong link between labor productivity and wages. It's not that there's not a link, because obviously wages do increase with time, but it's that the link between labor productivity. Hold on, wait. Labor productivity is doing a lot of work there, and that's the fundamental difference that I'm referring to. So labor productivity and economic output are two different things. You could call it like the productivity within a given sector. So labor productivity may increase marginally over time because workers can only be so productive. But the productivity of the industry, which is a product of the multiplicative factor of the economy of scale and the technologies that we use to multiply the productivity of workers, increases much, much faster, like 2 to 3% per year. So with a multiplicative like increase like that, and in a proportionally greater rise in the wages of the ultra wealthy, but then like the workers' wages peter out significantly in comparison. That's what I mean. But it's not like worker productivity, it's the output of the industry, which is what the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls productivity. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? We can look more into it in the future. I wish I could have talked about it more with him, but I felt like we were in like Looney Tunes land, you know? But workers won't see a large increase in wages if the increase in productivity, if it's due to capital productivity. No, I'm not referring to capital productivity. Just the overall wealth present in a given sector. Just the overall increase that I'm referring to. I can look into it more in the future. Even if I ended up being completely incorrect about the productivity thing, and I've heard really strong arguments that I'm not, that there is an element like that the argument there is valid, just some people misinterpret it. The rest of this was a complete blowout, so I don't, yeah, not a big deal. The reason I didn't do the coconut analogy, by the way, is because it requires the other person to concisely answer a few rhetorical questions, and he wasn't going to do it, you know? Like, if I asked him the coconut analogy, he would have ignored it and then rambled off on some other things. So I didn't, yeah. Yeah, so that's the reason why we didn't go there. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Sorry, not this time. Also, he's like a really serious guy, you know, it's just like the dick sucking analogy is a little. How could you have made the case that Ford was a worker if you got the chance to? Yeah, I also didn't get the opportunity to talk about that either. That's also something that's important to keep in mind. Many CEOs are workers. There are CEOs who found a company while being one of the workers at that company. That's a thing that happens, you know. That's not like, in fact, that's fairly common. But the act of ownership is not work in and of itself. The CEO is just doing two jobs there, the ownership and the work, you know? And yeah, if an owner is doing work, that work is work. The ownership is the thing that I'm attacking fundamentally. And by the way, CEOs did not become like 3 billion times as wealthy as workers because the work they do is more productive. They became it because they own the company. Why not talk about shareholders instead then? Because we were like on this conversation with this guy, we were like at level 1. And I feel like the distinction between different types of work and its relationship with like controlling labor is like a level 3 conversation. Does that make sense? I I feel like we were still I mean, I was talking with a guy who was saying lefties think that labor is created magically, and when he didn't like my arguments, he brought up Venezuela and said that there were worker co-ops in Venezuela, and that's why worker co-ops are bad. That's the level that I was at, okay? That's some level 1 stuff. We need there is so much more groundwork that needs to be done before we can arrive at conversations like, well, actually, it's not the labor productivity of CEOs that I'm impugning here. It's merely the act of ownership, which means, and by the way, the wealth that they acquire is from blah, blah, it's not, it's completely, you know, yeah. Okay. I feel like we're good. Tempest. You can cut it here. Okay. You're not impugning ownership under a co-op, though, since everyone does both, right? Well, yeah, in a co-op, everyone owns, so I wouldn't have an issue with that, you know? Like, I have an issue with the king being the ruler, but if everyone's the ruler, like in a democracy, then I guess I'm fine with it. Yeah. We play games now? I didn't think I'd be streaming again today. Screw you. I didn't think I'd be here again today. Go away. Oh, man. We need a cooldown period, okay? After all that. I was actually so nervous when I got like informed that I was missing out on this debate. I got so nervous because like again, he's an award-winning finance professor. I'm not like that arrogant. I don't think I came in here thinking, "Oh god, I didn't do the prep. I thought it was the other day. Oh god, oh god. I'm just going to have to stick to very basic talking points. I'm going to have to stick to like very simple like that kind of stuff, you know?" But then like I heard the arguments he made and I was like, "Oh, thank god." Oh, thank god. Okay. All right. And breathe a little bit, you know? Whew. Uh, yeah, you should watch Radical Reviewer's Atlas Shrugged video. It's worse than you think. The book, not the video. And the video has me in it. I do voice lines for Galt, John Galt. Do you think he legitimately believed in what he was arguing? Yes, with the fastidiousness and dedication of a religion. If you actually look at his Wikipedia page, this is the early life and education section. YARON BROOK was born and raised in Israel. His parents were Jewish socialists from South Africa. When he was 16, a friend lent him a copy of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, leading him to abandon the socialism taught to him by his parents and embrace objectivism. And then his whole life forward, he's been an objectivist because he read Atlas Shrugged in high school. God, imagine how disappointed the parents. Oh man, that's gotta hurt. Do you think he read Atlas Shrugged, or do you think he was just hit on the head with it really hard, and that caused just a similar effect to, to his brain, you know? I'm not... I do think that Yaron Brook is a smart guy, but I really do feel like I was arguing against a pastor here, you know? Does anyone else understand what I mean? The way, like, the hard questions would get ignored and he would go back to the preaching. I feel like I was arguing against, like, religious logic here and like an ideologue, you know? So I think he totally believes in what he's saying. I just don't think that I don't think he's introspective about like anything he says. This is a what am I looking for? Hold on. Wait, somebody just linked. This is a quick read from St. Louis Fed on how the decoupling of labor productivity and wages is overstated. Yeah, I've read. Okay, hold on. How well do wages follow productivity growth? Over long periods of time, increases in real wages, that is, adjusted for changes in consumer prices. Oh my God, hold on. We might want to. Reflect increases in labor productivity. Economists now widely agree labor productivity growth increased in the mid-1990s and remained at an elevated pace, at least relative to its anemic pace between 1973 and the mid-1990s. Numerous studies have traced the cause of the productivity acceleration to technological innovations in the hold on. Productivity non-farm business sector, total compensation per hour. Wait, what? I was using the Bureau of Labor Statistics. What was the deflated by core PCE productivity non-farm business? Okay, I assume that is the gray. Okay, gray total compensation per hour 1. This is from 1995 to 35. What about the wage? Is that what we're talking about here? PCE. What are we? PCE isn't mentioned anywhere here. What does PCE mean? What is that? Research technology and innovation. The impact of wide growth. Numerous news articles have discussed the apparent failure of wages to increase labor productivity. Less appreciated, perhaps, is that the productivity acceleration has been accompanied by important changes in the way business compensate their employees. Of particular importance is the increased use of variable pay, that is, compensation tied either to the performance of individual employees or the business's overall performance, including end-of-year bonuses, cash awards, profit sharing, and stock options. Wait, how many workers get end-of-year bonuses, cash awards, profit sharing, and stock options? What percentage of workers get these? So if they're arguing that the reason median wages have kept up is because of these like variable pay factors, this wouldn't affect people who work like subsistence jobs. Link to what PCE is. Personal consumption expenditures is a measure of imputed household expenditures defined for a period of time. Personal income, PCEs, and the PCE price index reading are released monthly in the... So is this like cost of living, basically? Or like the way in which cost of living rises proportionally across an aggregate? Like just basically how much you would expect people to spend? Average hourly earnings. Productivity, non-farm business sector, deflated by core PCE, deflated by PCE. Wait, doesn't this prove my point? Average hourly earnings, if you deflate them by PCE, haven't kept up with productivity. Wait, it's happening right here. In a time scale that lasts only 10 years, from 1995 to 2005, they diverge significantly over time. Isn't this my point for average hourly earnings? But then if you go by total compensation per hour, does this include the variable pay metric? But average hourly earnings do not include variable pay and fringe benefit. Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. A lot of hourly workers don't get any of these variable pay incentives at all. Wait, hold on. How many workers get variable pay? Approximately 71% of all organizations surveyed said they offer some kind of variable pay. Okay. 71% of orgs, but what? Just the managers? Who gets it? What percentage of workers benefit from it? Types of variable pay by organizational size. I don't want variable pay by org. I want how many workers benefit from variable pay. Over 1/3 of all surveyed respondents said their organization has a discretionary bonus plan. Only a third? Yeah, even if a corporation offers it, they don't offer it to everyone. And even if they offer it, that doesn't mean they offer enough. I feel like this actually proves my point. Variable pay may be used as a way of sandwiching or like shoring up the productivity to wage gap, but not everybody gets variable pay. Am I wrong on this? I'm not an economist. I just feel like 75% of orgs offer variable pay. Yeah, but like, but how many of workers get it? It said on that page who gets it. I thought I saw that part. Hold on. Yeah, who gets it, but I don't think it says who gets variable pay. There's a fair amount of variability across and within organizations when it comes to who gets variable pay and why. Yeah, I know. But how many? The prevalence and type of variable pay can also depend on the organizational level. Often, organizations struggle with how far down to extend their variable pay plan. That choice will ultimately depend on culture and budget, but again, it's worth noting what other organizations are doing. For those who have variable pay, most extend it all the way to non-exempt employees. Only 34% do not give non-exempt employees variable pay of some sort. So only non-exempt employees. Variable pay by organizational level. This is just percent of organizations that pay out variable pay on an annual business. What about how many workers? Yeah, variable pay is often used to keep wages low, by the way. Yeah, because how many people have ever been promised an end of year bonus and then ended up not getting it? How many people have experienced that? Like, oh yeah, we've done really well, and then like it doesn't happen. But I bet you the CEO still gets that end of year bonus. This stuff all happens. Variable pay is another way of abstracting the overall wealth of the working class to make it harder for us to understand the exploitation they're experiencing. 82% of executive variable pay. What does that mean? I need to know. How common are variable pay plans? Not how many orgs. Okay, I'd be willing to bet less than half of workers in the United States get a substantive variable pay plan, like something that would have a meaningful impact on their income. We need to look more into this in the future. I got a free meal card for the hotel I worked for. Yeah, technically that's variable pay. Like, that's not substantive, you know? Half seems pretty optimistic. Yeah, I'm really happy that this was linked to me. It was Rivera Life, right? I feel like this actually makes my argument for me, like, pretty well. Basically, it seems like variable pay is a way of keeping the median wages in line with productivity if you're only looking at the people privileged enough to benefit from variable pay. But if you're actually looking at people's wages, then it falls off significantly. And there are a ton of people who only get paid the wages. No, wait, it wasn't Rivera Life, was it? No, it wasn't. It was a yellow name. Paul Resendez. Sorry, I apologize. All yellow names look the same to me. I'm sorry. My tiny brain has trouble. I color code chat for my convenience, okay? I'm sorry. Healthcare is a big part of variable pay for better or for worse. Well, that's not good, probably. Search for productivity versus real wages. Well, I don't know if that includes variable pay. Productivity versus real wages over time. Yeah, this is from the Economic Policy Institute. From 1979 to 2019, net productivity rose 72%, while the hourly pay of typical workers essentially stagnated, increasing only 17%. Oh yeah, this is the chart that everyone likes to use. I know this doesn't account for every, like, compensatory statistic, but I feel like this still means something. There's a reason why these stats used to keep in line and then don't anymore. There's a reason why that happens. Like, it's not a coincidence. Yeah, this is the Economic Policy Institute. That's a fairly reputable source, isn't it? Automation? Yeah, sure, but who, like, that, I don't think the existence of automation doesn't excuse the exploitation of the working class. No, it isn't. The EPI's analysis is shitty. Okay, I took a look at this. This isn't the first time that I've seen this. The problem is a lot of this stuff is above my pay grade because it's like harder economics that I'm educated enough to like fully understand. See this? See how the lines go zigzag like that? This is beyond my pay grade, okay? Um, we can look more into it in the future. Maybe we can have like unlearning economics on or something. Maybe you should talk to SDL. Well, with respect, SDL isn't an economist. SDL knows. I would want to talk to like a PhD on this. Does SDL know? What's the secret? SDL, are you in chat? Can you like, do you have like an angle on this that I don't? The Bureau of Labor Statistics has a chart on this. The compensation productivity gap, a visual essay. productivity, real hourly compensation, natural logarithm of indices. Okay, but what does that mean? Productivity and real hourly compensation, non-farm business sector, first quarter 1947 to third quarter 2010. Um, are I don't know what this. If this is logarithmic, then does this represent a yearly percentage increase? Log graphs display exponentials as linear, so the gap here would be larger. Like, oh god, I'm sorry, I'm being brought back to my math. He has a degree in econ. Wait, SDL has a degree in econ? Every time I think of SDL, I think that like SDL is like 16 years old, but I think I'm thinking of Mouthy Infidel. That's not true. Just everyone looks so young to me, you know? Just hold on, let me try to figure this out for myself, okay? Labor productivity is output adjusted for price changes divided by hours worked at all jobs. Productivity in the U.S. non-farm business sector grew an average of 2.2% per year. That's what I said to the guy, right? I said between 2 to 3% per year? Or something like that? Or no, I said 2 to 3% per quarter, and that's been in the past 5 years or so. In the past 5, we've been seeing more and more economic growth lately. So in the past couple of years, it's been like this amount per quarter rather than per year. Overall, between 1940 and today, it's like yearly 2.2%. Okay. Real hourly compensation is the hourly cost of business adjusted for price changes of wages, salaries, and benefits paid to workers. Real hourly compensation grew at an average annual rate of 1.7% over the 63-year period. Oh, God, I don't know the mathematical function to determine this. But guys, a 2.2% per year increase over 63 years is massive compared to a 1.7% increase over 63 years, isn't it? Like, I know that sounds really, really similar, but this difference multiplies. Like, wouldn't it be you you would do like 1 times 102.2 to the 63rd power or something like that? Oh god, how do I do this with my because it compounds yearly. We're talking yearly interest here. How do you do that in a calculator? So you would do so the calculation that we're doing here is 1 times 102.2 times wait, no, that's not it. Sorry, wait. I'm sorry, I'm bad at math. Okay, it's 1 times 102.2 to the 63rd power. So it would be how do you do an exponent here? X squared? 1 times x? How do you do that? What's the button that I have to press? Hit the button top left? This is percentage. Oh, sorry. No, you're right. Not 102.2. It's 1.00. Oh, God. Sorry. Okay, we got to be careful. 1 times... Uh... 1.02. Oh, we need scientific calculator? Yeah, you're right. We do. Okay, there we go. Thank you. 1 times 1.022 to the 63rd power equals 3.939. Okay, let's make a note of that. 3.939 for our first number. Hold on. Okay. And then we clear. Okay. CE. And now we go 1 times the other one, which is 1.017 to the 63rd power. And we get 2.892. 2.892. And then we divide. We divide the percent difference, which would be wouldn't it be? It would be like a 290% increase for wages, but like a 400% increase for productivity, right? It'd be like nearly 100% more, yeah? So the way to graph this on a chart, basically, would be like, if we had... We're almost there, guys. I swear to God, we're almost there, okay? And if we're doing it like percentage-wise, you know? So this would be like 200%, 300%, you know? Like 400%, right? Of its original value. And then you have 1947, and then I don't know, like 2000 whatever, whatever the time is. So then with the relative difference, I'm struggling so hard, guys. You have to be here with me, okay? The way this would work, and I don't know exactly how they would like change with time. Or I don't know what the proportion would be necessarily, but basically the productivity line, which I'll do in red, would go up like this, right? And then the real wages line, which I'll represent in blue, would go up like this. Right? That has to be it. Yeah. Because those are the percentage proportional decreases. This would be a difference of 2.892, and this would be a difference of 3.939 over time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a massive difference with productivity and wages, okay? Is this not a massive difference? This has to be a massive this is an absolutely massive difference, okay? Productivity and wages there's absolutely something funky going on here, okay? Right? Do a ratio difference? I'm not a math major. Don't make the origin 100%, make it 0%. Don't. SDL DM'd you? Okay, hold on. You just recreated the chart in that paper? Yeah, well, you know what? I demonstrated it for everyone, so you could all... Okay, I don't know what these natural logarithm of indices mean, okay? So look, we've made it more approachable to human brains that didn't study mathematics, okay? I think this graph is a really good explainer of the causes of the productivity pay gap. The TLDR is that almost the entirety of the gap is driven by rising inequality. Ooh. We've been given a gap from the Economic Policy Institute. Well, isn't this the one that people get super mad about? Right? Or no, wait, here's the graph. There we go. Growing inequality dominates the story of slow wage growth. Growth of productivity, real average compensation, consumer and producer, real median compensation, and real median hourly wage, 1979 to 2018. Yikes! So real median hourly wage since 1980 has trickled up significantly. Sorry, not significantly, tiny, like a tiny amount to here. Real median hourly compensation is the same. And then real consumer average hourly compensation, whatever that means, goes up to here. Okay. The inequality of compensation is demonstrated by the difference between the black line and the blue line. And the difference between the green line and the black line demonstrates producer versus consumer deflator, whatever that means. And then the net productivity over here is loss in labor share. Okay, so the summary is that basically what I said to YARON book was correct, right? And that even though there have been some like mixed opinions on this, fundamentally there is absolutely a demonstrable evidence that productivity that the wages have not kept up with productivity. Okay? Okay. Should this be its own segment? I feel like we actually learned some really cool stuff here. I hope people don't make fun of me for not being amazing at math. I'm trying my best over here, okay? You know, I'm really putting the effort in. Yeah. That tiny ass difference is absolutely titanic. Oh, this tiny ass difference is monstrous. It's huge, you know? Net productivity versus the yeah. So we're looking at this difference right here, right? Cumulative percent change since 1979. Yeah, okay. Invite a professor to do a segment. Yeah. Wait. The producer versus consumer deflator is different inflation metrics. Consumer deflator is CPI and measures stuff people buy. Oh God. Okay, wait. We're going beyond. I just try my best. Oh God. There's a reason why I'm a sociology major. Okay. You know, I had to do like comparative statistical analysis and like multivariate regressive analysis in sociology, but I feel like that was more understandable to me. It felt like it was a little more intuitive, you know? I'm trying out here, okay? Absolutely shameless, Merrick. But yes, people should support SDL. SDL does a lot of really amazing work. More stuff that I need to learn about here. Huh. Well, anyway, the lesson here is that we're being screwed over by the bourgeois. Is that not always the lesson? It's basically always the lesson. So, anyway, you can understand the layman terms, but it's easy to make a mistake with the math if you don't talk to an economist. Sure, but I think I got that math correct because that was pretty simple. That was just cumulative interest, right? Yeah, I think I got that correct. Anyway, Tempest, do this thing too. I don't know. Today we learned about productivity and wages. Okay, Vosh struggles with math live. I don't know. Do some fun. God. You know, I really didn't intend on streaming again today or reading donos. We're going to have to read these quickly. And I'm still, by the way, putting off the donos that were given to me before. No, Tempest, I haven't. I promise I will. I promise I will. Oh, God. XPC69 with the 2 consecutive $5 donations. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Even CEOs will often acknowledge, like, the contribution of workers. Darwinian Realism and Albino Raven, thank you for the very kind tier 2 sub. I really appreciate that. Yes, I'm glad you liked the bee analogy. Do you subscribe to the economy is fake, or is it true but too reductionist? The economy is fake, but it's a fake thing that will always exist, and we better learn to understand it, because if you don't understand something that's fake, it can still hurt you. All right? The economy is like a ghost, but it's real, all right? Aximov and Geo Bush, thank you for the $5 both. I really, really appreciate that, comrade. HTTP Lovecraft, thank you for the very kind dollars. Glad you enjoyed the debate. It was fun, yeah. Schleppen Life, thank you for the $5. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I look tired. One of the best debates you've ever seen. That's very kind of you. Pastor of Muppets and Sake Tanuki, thank you for the very kind $10. True, I do, in fact, exploit the artists over at OK Buddy Vouch. It is true, you know? I am the monster of my own making. Keybot, Prince Mackay, and Nav Fact, thank you for the tier 1 subs. I'll really appreciate that. Thank you, Prince Mackay. It's very kind of you. Little Latte and DSA Luke, thank you for the $5. Both really appreciate that. I don't like Soviet aesthetics, DSA Luke, because the Soviet Union was a shit-ass state that did a lot of horrible things. I don't like pro-American aesthetics either. I just don't like nationalism in general, you know? Thanks, Valiant Shadow. Yeah, true, Little Latte. I feel like if Yaron Brook was walking around in, like, 1820s America, he would, like, find a starving, coal dust stricken little orphan child, like, coughing in the street, and when the kid, like, starts crying, he would, like, be like, don't worry, if you work real hard, then maybe one day you too can own a splendiferous set of overalls and, you know, a hat or something like that. I don't know. It's just the casual disregard for human suffering. Paul Resendez, thank you for the incredibly kind tier for sub. Paul Resendez, thank you for inspiring some information learning at the end there. I appreciated that a lot. Why does he have a has-been voice? You know, the Has-Been Hotel radio guy was modeled off radio announcers, right? Like the radio announcers existed before Has-Been Hotel. Cringe Leaks and Imperishable Neat, thank you for the $5 both. Really appreciate that. Corey Schiffman and Lunch Corp, thanks for the tier 1 subs. And yeah, Lunch Corp, thank you yourself. Really appreciate that. Asiano, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. Really appreciate that. How'd the debate go? I think it went well, the Surfs, in spite of me not doing any preparation whatsoever. And me showing up late, forgetting that I had a debate to do. A Space Whale, thank you for the very kind tier 2 sub. Firefist Sabo and Gloom, thank you for the $5 both. Really appreciate that. Maybe Firefist Sabo. What's your best advice on how I can educate yourself to be more like yourself, competent enough to argue leftist positions effectively? Can I email you too? You can email to me, but you're not going to get much of a response. I'm so swamped these days, I barely respond to emails anymore. I really love you guys. It's just like, oh my God. I get so many. You know? As for the advice, it's really just about being, like, interested in what you're learning and having the right cognitive processes to, like, determine what's bullshit and what's not. And anybody can learn those, you know? Jogging Jesse, thank you for the $10. I haven't actually done much reading in the post-Netanyahu Israeli government. It's something I definitely need to look into. And Wyatt Bronson, thank you for the incredibly kind $5. I'm sorry to hear that, comrade. Okay, we're still ignoring linkers because they're subhuman and not worthy of our time and attention. And let me make sure that I get everything from Streamlabs. You don't need to prepare to debate a libertarian. I was just I didn't know like how substantive the arguments against me would be. You know? Like, you know, Joe Feck, thank you for the $10. Unionize your workplace. True. Inkablue with a very kind $3. Yeah, hand caps can be convinced out of it. With the additional $2. You know, every time you talk to ANCAPs, I realize I could defend ANCAP ideas so much better than any ANCAP ever, Jesus Christ, as an ex-ANCAP. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I feel like it's dogmatism. Every time I talk with, like, a super libertarian dude, I almost feel like I want to, like, step in and do their arguments better for them, you know? I feel like I could actually make, like, a super compelling argument if I wanted to, you know what I mean? Like, for the ANCAP position, you know? Um, like, way better than the ones I hear, at least. Without lying, too. I just feel like I could make the argument better. Spirit of Yoldashev, thank you for the very kind $10. Highlight of this debate was you calling him urine. Did I do that? I didn't mean to do that. Hungamaster, thank you for the $2 donations using productivity instead of hard work. Yeah, I kept saying hard work instead of productivity, but like he also couldn't tell me what productivity even meant, so I don't even know. Purpose, thank you for $3. You didn't know the difference between feudalism and capitalism? No, I think that's the thing. I don't think he knew the difference between feudalism and capitalism because he was like, in feudalism, there was no managerial labor. There was no labor organizing. There was no like productivity. There was no like increase in industry, which is all like completely wrong. I feel like he thinks capitalism is the industrial revolution, you know? Stefan Molyneux said the exact same thing when I debated him, and Stefan Molyneux was also an ANCAP. He essentially described capitalism as the Industrial Revolution, but capitalism was around before the Industrial Revolution. There are capitalist countries that have not industrially developed, or at least in the past. Nowadays, most countries have at least partially industrially developed. And he described feudalism as though it was like just a bunch of farmers and people in huts, which is not what feudalism was. There were industries and there were banks. There were mercantile conglomerates. There were companies known the world around basically back during feudal days. It's just not. Yeah, it's so I don't think he knew the difference. You know. Um. Yeah. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know. First Amender, thank you for the $5. No, I will not invite you on to talk about urine, Brooke, but I appreciate the offer. Oh yeah, I appreciated, by the way, when he just started calling people who live on welfare parasites. That was very good, you know? I didn't even have time to talk about, like, you know, Ayn Rand was on welfare for a while. What if welfare is just a way of stabilizing the lives of the working class so they have the chance to bounce back and be more productive in the future, you know? That's another thing. Hey, have you guys ever noticed that people with, like, the cool entrepreneurial ideas tend to come from wealth to begin with? Why do you think that is? They're not busy working 3 jobs a day, like 12 hours every single day to not die. They have a moment to catch their breath and think, and they can use that to develop upon educational skills. These are all arguments that I wanted to use, but he was so stupid. Like, I couldn't even get to it. Like, we were so far away from being correct, you know? Ryan Rice, thanks for the $5. Sorry to have summoned you at this hour. Saint Shenanigans and Iridian Knight, thank you for the $5 both. I really, really appreciate that. Start more unions. Iridian Knight with the incredibly kind $20. If you'd like, I can explain a bit more about feudal economics and history. I think you'd find it quite useful for arguments like this in the future. Without wishing to come off as like arrogant, I think that I know like a decent amount. It's just that conversation didn't give me the leeway to discuss any of the nuances because he didn't. You shouldn't let his stupidity stop you from delivering good arguments. No, unfortunately, that's not true. Nuanced arguments need nuanced conversations. If you have like a really, really strong argument for something that requires a lot of lead up and setup and like you need to be able to interpret and understand this and this and this, if the other person ignores all the points that you make, barrels through your questions and like strawmans your arguments right after, it's completely worthless. You have to go with simple arguments that hit hard. That's just rhetoric 101. Super nuanced arguments are for conversations that can sustain that level of inquiry. But unfortunately, that is just not... everything. Also, what are voluntary taxes? Yeah, I'd love to talk about that more. Michael Burt, thank you for the 5 Canadian. Yeah, it's true. It's just not fair. I mean, one of the best arguments against the whole productivity thing is, look at me. I get paid a fuck ton, and I don't produce anything. I produce content. There are plenty of people who work way harder than me, produce way more content than I do, but they don't get anywhere near the donations that I do. You know why I get the donations that I do? Because I meet public demand. Not because I'm more productive, but because there's more of a demand for what I do. Because I'm more popular, you know? But that's not the same as me being more productive. Things can be popular even if they're unproductive and ultimately destructive. Productivity is a term that has an inherent positive connotation associated with it, which is why he was associating it so hard with people in the managerial class. It's a sort of moral accreditation. That darn skag, thank you for the 10 Canadian. Casper Christensen with the $2, maybe. Kaizen Kamikaze, thank you for the very kind $5. Why are all Ayn Rand supporters such cartoon characters? Because you need to be to read Atlas Shrugged and think it makes good points. First Amender, thank you for the incredibly kind $20. How can I debate you now about that YARON debate? Come on, I can argue this. Argue his positions? Well, that'd be unfortunate. I'm done right now. Lord Parber, thank you for the very kind $10. In Atlas Shrugged, the only reason society even fell apart when the CEOs left was because they murdered people and destroyed infrastructure on the way out. Yeah, I haven't actually read Atlas Shrugged. It's like, dude, the world would miss CEOs if they left. If they also detonated a bunch of nukes and killed a bunch of people when they left. Well, okay, sure, maybe. Adam Moore, thanks the $5. Agreed. Idea guys are worthless in industry. You need to make those ideas happen. First Amender, thank you for the additional $5. John Burton, thank you for the very kind $10. Yeah, we might do more Acon research in the future. In fact, I know we will. Bronxbjorn, thank you for the incredibly kind $10 yourself. I really appreciate that. Yes, Ayn Rand was a dumb fuck. And Isaac Ajay with the very kind $20. His take on teachers is the reason why I'm getting my MPA and started an educational policy fellowship. The belief teachers work hard but deserve a low wage is wild. Watching your channel got me into policy. Thanks for what you do. Yeah, you could argue that the most productive people of all are like teachers and parents because they're the ones who like ascribe into young people the fundamental skills necessary to do anything worthwhile in an economy. But parenting is a completely unpaid vocation, and teachers get paid jack shit. So, yeah. Anyway, folks, I love you all very, very much. I appreciate you coming on for this emergency debate. It sure was wacky. And I had a good time. I did. I did. I had a good time. Who are we rating today? Let's rate Demon Mama. We see Demon Mama on Twitch. Demon Mama doesn't stream that much on Twitch. We'll rate Demon Mama. Okay, get on over there, okay? What did I just click that made the thing break? There we go. Go. Wait! That's not the Demon Mama that... What is Demon Mama's handle? Demon Mama Live. Okay, so there's another account called Demon Mama. Demon Mama Live. Go. Nice. I love you all very much. Everyone take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. And, I don't know, keep it poggers.